Hello, hello. Somehow, I think my microphone stopped writing itself, so that's nice. I don't feel like working on my AI today, so I'm just gonna jump back into playing Zelda and listening to spooky YouTube videos. Deadly Sky Food, SCP, apparently. Holy shit, that's loud. Uh,
Face of the inhuman flight attendant, her eyes too large and far apart, her teeth too sharp and too numerous.
okay, yeah.
Her skin shiny and wet, fish-like. She holds the glistening chrome can and peels off the lid. Inside, thick, knotted worms wriggle together. Your in-flight snack.
Wriggly worms.
Less than an hour earlier, the researcher sits in his office at SCP Foundation Site 3A, eyes excitedly glued to the monitor on his desk. On it, he can see a live video feed being streamed directly from the camera pinned to the collar of D-Class 1442. Through this remote viewing setup, the researcher will be able to view the first man testing of a recently acquired anomaly, one so new that the official file is still actively being written. As a relatively new researcher at the organization, this is his chance to make his mark on Foundation history. The anomaly is a plane, an entire plane retrieved from the Pacific Ocean and brought to a hangar at the site. Like many items recovered by the Foundation, it seems perfectly normal at first glance. In fact, it almost seems too normal. After crashing into the ocean,
Normal.
the aircraft should be visibly damaged, but there's nothing wrong with it. Not so much as a scratch on the exterior. The interior is pristine, and the mechanical parts are all perfectly operational. So the higher-ups approved a series of tests to determine what exactly is so strange about this plane. The best way to do that is to see it in action. Multiple D-Class have been placed inside, scattered in various seats throughout the cabin. In the cockpit, the only agent at Site 3A with a pilot's license, Agent Kulkarni, prepares for takeoff. He sends a quick message to
Agent
the
Con Carne.
letting him know that all systems are operational and ready to go. It's time for this mysterious plane to take to the skies, and the researcher has a front row seat. The takeoff goes smoothly, with no notable anomalous activity. At this point, it just feels like watching a first-person simulation of a typical airline experience. Then, as the plane reaches cruising altitude, the intercom crackles to life, and a chipper voice makes an announcement.
Hello everyone, and welcome to your flight with Kingfisher Airlines. I'll be your pilot. Now that we've successfully taken off, make sure to keep your seatbelts unbuckled. Make our jobs a little easier, huh?
The researcher's brow furrows at the sound. That is not Agent Kulkarni's voice. Who is that talking? He sends a message to Agent Kulkarni, but gets no response. Right, of course, he's too busy flying the plane. The researcher jots down a note on his clipboard, recording the first instance of anomalous activity on the plane. Then, he returns his gaze to the monitor. He can see on the video feed that D-1442 has unbuckled their seatbelt in accordance with the announcement's instructions. None of the D-Class appear to react to the announcement, aside from taking off their seatbelts. As D-1442's camera pans down to the floor of the cabin, the researcher begins furiously scribbling notes.
What's the other way to deal with this thing?
Running through the aisles of the plane, soaking the carpeted floor. The researcher squints, noting dots of green throughout the wall.
There has to be something other than just using bombs, right?
Seaweed. He's certain of it. The water trickles under D-1442's seat, soaking their shoes, and the researcher waits for a reaction. But it never comes. It's as if the D-Class hasn't noticed the apparent seawater spilling into the plane. The camera pans around the plane, and much to the researcher's surprise and frustration, none of the other D-Class are reacting either. He scribbles down some more notes. This must be part of the plane's anomalous nature. Those inside don't notice that anything unusual is happening, even though it is. But why seawater? He underlines the question several times for emphasis, but no answer reveals itself. At least, not yet.
But why
It's
seawater?
a bit unsettling to see a plane full of D-Class acting as if they're on a perfectly ordinary trip on a perfectly ordinary plane, as salt water pools in their shoes, seeping into their socks. Look at the seaweed floating through the waves of water. The researcher can almost smell it, the briny sting of salt
What
in
the
his nose.
fuck?
He wonders what it might mean, and shudders as his imagination runs wild. Perhaps the plane drowns its passengers. Nope, there's no use getting ahead of himself. Better to just wait and see what happens next. It doesn't take long.
Oh, this thing doesn't reflect?
Unfold on the monitor. The camera
That's
shakes
obnoxious.
violently as the plane apparently experiences some turbulence. As if reading his mind, D1442 makes a comment about the turbulence, turning the camera toward the window. Just like the water, D1442 cannot see anything unusual outside. But on his monitor, sitting in his office, the researcher can see the truth, even if he doesn't understand what it means yet. There's something caught on the wing of the plane. That much he knows for sure. He squints, leaning forward until his nose is almost touching the screen. What is that? The plane rocks again, and the wing is yanked upward a bit by what he can now see is some kind of wire. He can't see where it ends. It just extends up into the sky until it vanishes from view. And then D1442 is turning the camera away from the window again, and the researcher can no longer inspect.
Has to be another solution to that I'm just not remembering.
Now trained on the aisle again, where two figures are trudging through the sopping wet carpet, wheeling
I thought like spinning around it did something. Don't remember what though.
Manages to get a better look at them. A man and a woman, neither of whom look familiar to him, both dressed in matching blue uniforms. On their blazers, they each wear a pin in the shape of a fish and a hook. Atop their heads, blue hats are pinned in place.
Doesn't seem like that's doing anything.
Off about their appearances, their very presence is of concern.
Does
to
it
the
have to be
researcher.
this way?
There were no flight attendants placed on board. Why would there be? This goes beyond seawater and strange wires on the wings. Now there are brand new humanoids anomalously appearing aboard the plane, wobbling down the aisle with a cart full of drinks. No, not drinks, cans of some kind. As the flight attendants walk, the researcher takes note of their unusual gaits. They move with awkward, arrhythmic plodding steps, like a newborn deer learning to walk for the very first time. For a baby animal, it's endearing. For two supposedly adult humans who have appeared as if from nowhere, wheeling their cart of mysterious cans, it sends a shiver down the researcher's spine. As the female flight attendant approaches D1442, shiny metal can in hand, the camera captures a glimpse of her face up close. Her eyebrows are drawn on too high, giving her a wide-eyed shock appearance. No, it isn't just the eyebrows. Her eyes themselves are a bit too wide. Her mouth is stretched in a broad, red lipstick grin, showing just a few too many teeth for the researcher to feel at ease. As she offers the can to D1442, and they reach out to take it, the researcher notes that the flight attendant does not blink once. She never speaks either. She just holds that unsettling smile and waits for D1442 to take the can from her hand. Then she moves on to the next passenger. D1442's camera tilts down toward the can, and they peel back the lid to reveal its contents. As the lens focuses, the researcher's stomach turns at the sight. The can is filled to the brim with writhing, squirming, fat and juicy earthworms. His father used to bring on family
Fat
trips
and juicy.
when he was a little boy. D1442 reaches into the can and pulls out a long, wriggling worm, lifting it toward their face. No, please don't do it. But they can't feel the researcher's revulsion, nor do they seem to even realize they're holding a worm and not a more conventional airplane snack. The camera is mercifully turned away from D1442's face, so the researcher doesn't have to watch, but he can hear the wet chewing, and he knows exactly what is happening. He covers his mouth, fighting the urge to gag as he watches the rest of the D-Class follow suit, opening their cans and beginning to eat the worms one at a time. With all of the worms passed out, the two flight attendants begin to shamble back up the aisle, pushing the cart through the thick layer of green seaweed that now blankets the floor. There's even more of it than there was a few moments ago, and the researcher can no longer see any of the carpet beneath. The two flight attendants vanish behind the curtain at the front of the plane, leaving the passengers alone with their worms. Nothing else unusual happens for nearly 2 hours, and the researcher sits
2 hours of worm time.
Camera's line of sight slowly devours each and every worm in their respective can, occasionally idly glancing out the window or flipping through a magazine. The researcher is just beginning to think the anomalous events might be over when the curtain opens once again. The female flight attendant is back. At least, he thinks it must be her. The silhouette looks the same, but it's difficult to be certain. Her face is no longer visible. Instead, it is wrapped in wires that look identical to those spotted on the wing during the supposed turbulence earlier. The wires are draped around her entire body, hanging from her arms, her shoulders, and brushing along the floor next to her shoes. As the flight attendant begins to walk down the aisle in those same eerie plodding steps, she reaches out to a passenger, and the researcher nearly falls out of his chair in shock. Her hands. They aren't hands anymore. They've been replaced with fishing hooks. Giant fishing hooks the size of the hands she once had.
Fishing plane?
1442 headed toward the back of the plane. She's out of sight for a few moments until she crosses back into the camera's view. There's a passenger with her, a D-class with his hands tied together behind his back, wrists bound with something thin and transparent. Again, the researcher remembers those trips with his father. Fishing line. The man is bound with fishing line. He follows the flight attendant with a docile expression, seemingly unconcerned by his state of captivity, the strange wires, and her hook hands. As the flight attendant and the passenger pass the camera, the researcher can see that he was mistaken. She does not just have one passenger with her. She has 5, all with their wrists bound in fishing line, all following her without one word of protest or attempt to resist. The flight attendant and the 5 passengers all vanish through the curtain. D-1442 places the now empty can of worms in the back pocket of the seat in front of them. Then, everything is still again for a while, save for the continuous flow of seawater through the aisles, filling the cabin inch by inch. It is at D-1442's knees now, and creeping ever higher. Still, they do not budge. All of a sudden, the plane shakes violently. D-1442's gaze, and the camera with it, snaps toward the window. There, cloud formations rapidly whirl through the air, pouring buckets of water. Lightning flashes, illuminating the darkened sky for a moment. In that moment, brief though it is, the researcher can make out some odd shapes snaking through the air, weaving between the clouds. Another flash of light.
Big fish.
Eels. If his guess is correct, he'd say they are electric eels specifically. D-1442 does not see the eels, but does seem to be affected by the sudden, dramatic change in the weather. They chuckle nervously, voice quavering slightly, and remark that this thunderstorm wasn't predicted on the Weather Channel that morning. The plane shakes again as another flash of lightning breaks through the darkness, revealing more and more eels.
God damn it.
The window itself is wobbling, the glass beginning to buckle under the pressure of the water outside, more and more pouring against it. Crash. The glass shatters, and water pours in through the open window, where there should be roaring wind. An eel flies through the window, landing on D-1442's lap. It flops furiously back and forth, as D-1442 passively ignores it. The water levels begin to rise rapidly, up and over D-1442's legs, up their chest, until the water is
Every time I go the wrong direction.
Luckily, the camera is outfitted for underwater filming, though the researcher never expected that particular function to be relevant while testing an anomalous airplane. It continues to pick up video, displaying it all on the monitor as it begins to shake violently. The sound of choking can be heard as D-1442 attempts to keep choke and splutter, slowly drowning without even underwater. The camera begins to drift upward, floating away from its place on D-1442. As it hits the ceiling, it
Give me your money.
D-1442's unconscious body, floating there below. The rest of the passengers, the ones who didn't leave with the flight attendant earlier, are also drifting through the water.
Fucking
Or worse.
Jesus Christ.
Bodies are covered in green, the seaweed from before growing over them. The researcher is writing furiously now, getting down every detail. When he finishes writing, he grabs his phone. He needs to get back in communication with Agent Kulkarni and figure out an extraction plan before the man drowns, if he hasn't already. The phone rings, but no answer. He should have expected that. It's probably been damaged by the water too. The researcher is just about to contact the site director and ask what to do, when the camera picks up motion coming from behind the curtain. Something is emerging from the cockpit. The curtain is shoved to the side, and out bursts Agent Kulkarni. He appears to be breathing steadily.
Agent Con Carne.
He looks terrified, disoriented, but otherwise unaffected by the chaos unfolding around him. His eyes widen, his eyelids flutter, and he collapses to the ground. His body convulses, as if he's having a seizure. He opens his mouth as if to scream, but nothing comes out. Well, at least no sound comes out. Something else does. His jaw opens wider, wider, and wider still, his jaw unhinging like a snake, or an eel, the researcher thinks. There's a glint of metal in the back.
Eel con carne.
All at once, a large fishing hook comes rocketing out of his mouth. Another follows it, and another, all connected to fishing line that seems to come from deep in Agent Kulkarni's stomach. Whatever anomalous forces have changed the plane, filled it with water, created eels and flight attendants, have also changed him. The hooks push through the water, moving of their own accord, and attach themselves to the remaining passengers. Some only hook their clothes, others hook deeper, and blood colors the water.
Uh-oh.
Something, and the camera
Screamer.
doesn't pick up what, grabs hold of Agent Kulkarni's leg, pulling him back into the darkness beyond the curtain. As he goes, his body pulls the fishing line, dragging the hooks and the passengers.
Fuck.
One by one, they vanish from view until the plane is empty.
Fuck.
The intercom crackles impossibly beneath the water, and the same unrecognizable voice speaks.
Thank you for flying with Kingfisher.
Silence for a moment. Then,
Kingfisher.
the video feed has been lost.
That's a bird that fishes.
Unable to contain his
Get it?
rage, they lost an entire plane full of D-Class and his valued colleague, and received no concrete answers about the plane. If anything, he has far more questions. One of which is, where is the plane now? A recovery team manages to locate the plane in a surprising place. It lands a few hours later in the same place where it took off. It should be damaged, filled with water, covered in broken windows and gouges from those hooks. But it is just
Damn.
as spotless as it was when they found it. Not a drop of water,
Fuck.
speck of seaweed to be seen. No sign of any of its passengers either, or the captain. The only thing on the plane that wasn't there before is the camera, completely dry, sitting in D1442's seat as if nothing ever happened. Its locally recorded video confirms the researcher's witness account. Everything he saw seems to be completely real. All planned test flights that were intended to follow this first one are canceled due to concerns from the ethics committee, as well as budgetary concerns regarding the loss of staff. The researcher turns in his notes, his job complete. Then he requests a transfer to another assignment. He's had quite enough of SCP-3531. I can't say I blame him. I was never fond of flying in the first place, but this anomaly has introduced a new level of dread to the experience. SCP-3531 is a Boeing
What's the difference
737
between
airliner that is
almost
unremarkable in
none?
every way at first glance. The exterior and interior appear normal, and when not in flight, the plane
Jesus.
is completely non-anomalous. When SCP-3531 is in flight, however, that's a different story. Photographs, videos, and audio recordings taken inside of the craft while it is in the air show forms of aquatic-based anomalous phenomena, as well as humanoid figures that manifest and act as flight attendants, despite not being present before the plane takes off. However, in spite of this obviously unusual phenomena, observers are either ignorant of it or unwilling to acknowledge it. Even when presented with video evidence, they will refuse to believe it. Outside witnesses appear to be unaffected, with the ignorance or inability to perceive the anomalies limited to those physically inside of the plane. SCP-3531 was first discovered by the SCP Foundation when Mobile Task Force Lambda-4, birdwatchers, conducted a routine inspection of the plane's black box footage. The footage included the following recorded audio.
Look, I'll get you your shipment. We've been held up with processing. Yes, I know how many times I've said it. It's finicky. No, I swear, it's just logistics. The clothes are the main problem. We can't get them off mid-flight, so... It's not the attendants, no, they're working fine, but it's hard enough to convince the people that they're on a normal flight. Getting them to, prepare themselves like that would be... No, I'm sorry, it'll be fine. Just, it shouldn't take much longer. The shipment will be...
The voice on the recording was identified as Mrs. Janet Kaminsky, a missing pilot who was presumed dead along with the crew and passengers of the flight. How did they all die? The plane crashed into the Pacific Ocean. I can't be certain of what happened, but if I had to guess, I'd say she made that shipment after all. SCP-3531 is stored in the hangar of Site-3A. Tests using SCP-3531 may only be conducted
Happens
at
if
the
I buy
discretion
it
of the site
again?
director. The details of SCP-3531's nature are sparse, at least in terms of what is available to someone not assigned to its research team. The best that I can surmise, Kingfisher is not a legitimate airline, though I'm sure you've already figured that out. I believe they are a company that services clientele who are interested in fishing, though not for what we might think of as traditional fish. It would seem that humans are loaded onto this anomalous aircraft and kept there, seated and docile, for Kingfisher's clients to capture. Whoever or whatever these clients are, presumably the voices on the other side of Janet Kaminsky's phone call, they are fishing for humans using anomalous means. Who knows how many shipments were made using SCP-3531 before it was seized by the Foundation? The fictitious airline, the plane, the flight attendants, all made for the perfect ruse, and the victims fell for it hook, line, and sinker.
Get it?
Check out the Dr. Bob Patreon and become a junior researcher today. Now
Yeah.
go and watch another entry from the files of Dr. Bob, like SCP-2789, Evil Fast Food Self-Replicating.
The fuck? Okay, so I can't
A
hit him
body
while I'm
twists and
doing that.
turns into unimaginable shapes. Eyes glow in the dark. Shadowy entities appear around you, mimicking your every move. Would you like a stick of gum? In a small seaside town nestled just along the coast of New England, and at least an hour's drive away from any major city, there isn't much to do but brave the chilly ocean waters, crowd onto the rocky beach, or walk along the boardwalk. For most of the residents of this quaint
On
little
the
town,
boardwalk.
the choice is clear. Years ago, when the town was at the height of its success as a tourist destination, visitors would flock from all over the country, descending on the boardwalk like the seagulls that swarm around the food stands in search of an errant French fry. In its heyday, the boardwalk boasted a small amusement park with a roller coaster and a Ferris wheel, an arcade with the latest in 1980s video game technology, several stands selling hot dogs and crispy French fries coated in grease and salt, and the pride and joy of many a local, a classic, old-fashioned candy store. Today, the arcade is all but empty, with one or two players occasionally wandering in to try their hand at the now vintage attractions inside. The amusement park is still standing, but the rides have faded and chipped. The stands still sell their wares, but the lines are shorter than they once were. And at the center of it all, the beloved candy shop is struggling to hold on. The price of waterfront property has climbed, while tourism has dwindled. And with online shopping taking over the market, well, the candy shop's owner can scarcely scrape enough money together to keep the roof over his head. On this particular day, the shop owner is restocking his shelves, the door propped open to let in just enough of the crisp, salty ocean breeze to keep his head clear and his spirits up. It's getting harder and harder to maintain the cheerful demeanor he's known for, to step into his red and white striped suit every day and smile for the few tourists who poke their heads into the shop. But still, he keeps at it. He loves this little store,
Boo.
and he'll keep holding on to it until there's nothing left to hold. He fills glass containers with colorful little hard candies, slides boxes of saltwater taffy onto shelves, and places blocks of fudge in the glass case by the cash register. All the while, he takes a little sample of each product for himself. A candy here, a small square of fudge there, to keep his energy up. Besides, he would never sell a product he didn't taste test first, only the best for his customers, though they were few and far between these days. Especially this time of year, as the air grows colder and the days get shorter, sunshine becomes a limited commodity as the summer turns to autumn. So it comes as quite a surprise to the older man when he hears a knock
Guess I
at the
should
shop
learn
door.
instead
He
of
turns
just
and sees a delivery man standing there with a stack of
bashing my
packages.
face against
This
it.
is especially odd, as you can't
Fucking
recall
hell.
ordering anything. But the delivery man explains that these packages are product samples from an up-and-coming candy company, one specializing in novelty chewing gum. They are providing samples to a variety of small candy businesses, as well as larger retail outlets, in order to conduct market research. These particular flavors, the delivery man promises, cannot be found anywhere else. Well, the promise of a new, exclusive product to draw new customers in is more than a little bit exciting for the shopkeeper. Without a second thought, he signs for the packages and carries them inside. The shop has carried a few varieties of chewing gum over the years: mint, cinnamon, fruit, and even prank gum that turns a person's tongue black when they chew it. What could possibly be so unique about this gum? He's determined to find out.
Jesus.
As he cuts open the boxes, the shopkeeper is greeted with brightly colored packaging that looks, for the most part, like any other gum packaging out there. He does quickly notice one unusual difference, though: the flavor names. Each of them begins with the phrase, "tastes like," which is a clever enough branding choice, but the flavors themselves are odd. He lifts the first packet and reads its label, brow furrowing in confusion. Tastes like youth. What could that possibly mean? For a novelty candy, this gum sure is especially novel. Well, he never stocks a product without trying it out for himself first, so he unwraps a piece of the bright pink gum and pops it into his mouth. The first thing that he notices is the taste, an overwhelming sweetness tinged with nostalgia. It tastes like cotton candy, but not just any cotton candy. It tastes like the cotton candy he once enjoyed as a little boy on this very boardwalk, a flavor he hasn't experienced in 60 years. The next thing that he notices is that his eyes are aching all of a sudden. He takes off his glasses for a moment and is shocked by what he sees. Everything, clearly, without the aid of the lenses. His vision is like it was when he was a young man, before age had blurred the edges of everything in his line of sight. His joints have stopped aching, and he feels a sudden surge of energy, the sudden urge to run, to jump, to click his heels together. He rushes to the bathroom mirror, half expecting to see his younger face staring back at him. No, he still looks the same, but he feels decades younger. His mind reels, and he can't think of anything to do but laugh. This gum. It should be impossible, but this piece really does taste like youth. This might just be the product that saves the store. The invigorating effect lasts, all in all, for about a half hour. But during that half hour, the shopkeeper feels more optimistic than he has in many, many years. And the feeling lingers even after the gum's
I'm gonna
effects
do another
subside.
normal run.
But what other flavors did he receive? The delivery man brought 3 boxes, so what about the other 2? He opens the second box and pulls out a pack. Tastes like Mom used to make. Well, that's even more vague than the first one. But after the experience of the previous one, he's eager to discover exactly what that could mean. He unwraps a piece, studies its light brown color, and pops it into his mouth. As soon as he begins to chew, the flavor explodes on his tongue, taking him back once again to his childhood. Brown butter, sugar, chocolate chips, a hint of vanilla. It can't be. But it is. It's his mother's chocolate chip cookie recipe. How could the manufacturers have possibly recreated it so perfectly? The flavor passes quickly, and eager to confirm his experience and make sure it was real, he grabs another piece. This one tastes entirely different. Blueberry pancakes, like his mother used to make on Sunday mornings, dripping with syrup and melted butter. This is the most unusual chewing gum indeed. In all his years of selling candy, of tasting every unusual innovation or novelty product, he never dreamed it could be like this. Now for the third package. He slices the box open and finds black packages inside, emblazoned with eerie red writing. The text read, "Tastes like your worst nightmare." The shopkeeper feels a chill run down his spine, his hands shaking with nerves as he unwraps a piece of the pitch-black gum. But he can't stop himself. He has to satisfy his curiosity to discover what nightmares taste like. He pops the piece into his mouth and begins to chew. At first, he's almost disappointed. It doesn't taste like much of anything. Vaguely sweet, almost creamy, like finishing a glass of warm milk before bed. But as he chews, the shop around him begins to blur and warp, lights dimming until he is standing in the dark. The hairs on his arms stand to attention, and he becomes overwhelmed with the sensation of eyes on his back. Something's here, and it's watching him. He spins around and finds nothing there. But wait, what's that? Out of the corner of his eye, a shadow darting just out of sight into the storage room in the back. Against his will, his feet begin to carry the man toward that room, following the shadow. But the door to the storeroom is shut. It wasn't shut before. Something closed it when it darted inside, and it's in there now, waiting for him. His stomach turns as his hand reaches for the doorknob, turning it inch by inch. His nerves are screaming at him to stop, to turn and run. But as if trapped in a nightmare, his body refuses to obey him. It pushes the door open with a pronounced creak, and there, in the darkness, 2 glowing red eyes gaze out at him. The shopkeeper's heart leaps into his throat, and in a moment of clarity, he spits out the gum. All at once, the glowing eyes are gone, the lights have come back on, and the nightmare is over. He resolves not to stock that particular flavor in the shop, and tucks the box away in the back of that same storage room. Before long, his two new nostalgic flavors of magic chewing gum draw the attention of the SCP Foundation, who, after paying the man enough money to keep the shop open for the foreseeable future, call it a finder's fee, take the gum samples into custody and give them the classification SCP-1200. The designation SCP-1200 applies to all instances of chewing gum distributed under the brand Tastes Like Chewing Gum. Packages of this gum have been spotted in various grocery and convenience stores around the United States, appearing seemingly at random. Each pack of gum features a logo, identifying the manufacturer as simply the factory. Whenever a human subject masticates or chews a piece of the gum, a certain anomalous effect will occur. This effect varies depending on the color and flavor of the given gum. There have currently been 83 flavors of SCP-1200 identified and cataloged. Swallowing this gum does not appear to produce any additional anomalous effects. Also, contrary to what certain popular misinformation might say, this gum, or any gum in fact, does not stay in the digestive tract for 7 years. The 83 flavors on file can be found in SCP-1200-EKV, which was unfortunately impossible for me to obtain during my research into SCP-1200. The official file does, however, include a partial list of some of these flavors. Though I would have preferred to conduct a more comprehensive review, this at least provides a bit of valuable additional context for the anomalous product. So let's review some of the most memorable SCP-1200 flavors and their recorded effects on human test subjects. SCP-1200-12 is a lime green colored gum flavor, which is, funnily enough, called Tastes Like Lemons. When a human subject chews this flavor, their gustatory perception is altered for the next 28 hours. No matter what they eat during that time frame, it will taste like lemons. A bit odd, but not harmful, unless the subject just really hates the taste of lemon. After the 28-hour period is up, all food reverts to its original taste. SCP-1200-15 is a bright yellow flavor, tastes like sunshine. When a test subject eats this flavor, they will become luminescent, emitting over 40,000 lux of white light. This effect, while disconcerting to witness, does not do any harm to the subject exhibiting it. The subject's luminescence lasts for approximately 20 minutes at full intensity, and then the light begins to dim gradually until it disappears completely after 4 more minutes. You may have noticed that this flavor is a great deal more abstract than tastes like lemons. Well, they only get more unusual from here. The next flavor detailed in the file for SCP-1200 is SCP-1200-29, tastes like Rubik's Cube. Like the cube for which it's named, this flavor is multicolored, checkered in white, orange, green, red, yellow, and blue. When a subject eats this flavor, their body takes on a unique property for the next 216 minutes. During this window of time, the subject will be able to rearrange segments of their body, both internal and external, at will. This has no impact on the subject's health or comfort, even when rearranging bones, muscles, and vital organs. However, these alterations cause secondary changes within the body as it compensates for the movements. Unfortunately, this means that the first test subject to consume this flavor during SCP Foundation trials was unable to return her body to its original orientation before the 216 minutes were up. She failed to solve the puzzle, and now her left and right hands are permanently swapped. The next flavor included in the file is SCP-1200-30, a dark blue gum that is described as tastes like those forgotten. What could that possibly mean? Well, it means that once a test subject has chewed this flavor, 6 corporeal humanoid entities will manifest in their vicinity. These entities do not appear to be sentient, and their only behavior is mimicking the actions and speech of the subject and any other humans in the area, such as guards and researchers. These entities linger for 6 days before disappearing, leaving a homogeneous liquid behind. Analysis of the liquid determined that it consisted of a mixture of organic materials, iron particles, and acrylic paint. SCP-1200-58 is a particularly curious flavor. This white gum tastes like afterlife. When the subject chews it, a polyhedral crystalline exoskeleton forms around them. Once it has formed, it will levitate 1.3 meters off of the ground. During the first trial, this object remained inert for a period of 62 days. When the 62 days were up, the exoskeleton broke apart, leaving the subject behind and completely unharmed. He was immediately interviewed about his experience inside the structure, and he described being transported to a green meadow, where he met his younger brother. This was especially curious considering that the subject does not have any recorded siblings, living or dead. Another notable aspect of this flavor is its effect's resemblance to SCP-1511, crystalline structures that transfer prisoners while showing them some manner of beautiful, false afterlife. The only other flavor included in the file is Tastes Like Moon's Shadow, a red gum that has been tested once on a female research subject. After she finished chewing the piece of gum, a series of incorporeal, translucent, leporine organisms began to emerge from the walls of the cell where the subject was being kept.
Leporine.
During this entire process, the subject claimed to not see the entities, nor did she feel it when they approached her, reached her, and burrowed into her body. Video recordings of the incident were unable to capture these entities. 11 days after the experiment was conducted, the subject was found dead. Despite the lack of visible injuries, her cause of death was determined to be exsanguination. This is the only recorded fatality resulting from a sample of SCP-1200. There appears to be a link between this gum flavor and SCP-1284, though I have not yet been able to determine the nature of this link. On February 20th, 2003, the SCP Foundation was conducting an investigation completely unrelated to SCP-1200. The exact nature of this original investigation has been redacted from the file, but whatever it was, it's irrelevant to the subject at hand. It isn't the investigation, but what they discovered by complete accident that matters. Foundation operatives stumbled upon a secretive facility that was entirely dedicated to the production of tastes like those forgotten. When the Foundation entered the facility, they discovered an assembly line, as well as 28 anomalous entities dwelling inside. It would appear that these entities, referred to as SCP-1200-A, are part of the company's workforce. Instances of SCP-1200-A are animate humanoid entities whose physiology is composed primarily of wrought iron. They are also coated in several layers of paint, usually in a shade of white, pale blue, or yellow. These layers of paint are worn, faded, and flaking, and the metal beneath is beginning to rust.
Yeah, the weapon
Whenever they were
guy.
made, it was some time ago, and they have fallen into a state of disrepair. Each instance has no facial features on its head, and the only feature present is one large, circular opening, which seems to operate a bit like a mouth. In addition to discovering the facility and its anomalous workers, this discovery gave the Foundation some new insight into the production process for this particular flavor of tastes like chewing gum. The image that it painted was, well, troubling. When instances of SCP-1200-A are not contained, they will attempt to collect recently deceased human cadavers and transport them to the production facility. If they are permitted to do so, they will collect these bodies from freshly dug graves or even poorly guarded morgues and carry them back to the facility. There, an SCP-1200-A instance will take one of its chosen corpses and begin to regurgitate paint, biological matter, and small slags of iron into the body's mouth. I apologize for the stomach-turning imagery, but there is simply no pleasant way to describe this process. The instance will repeat this process over a period of several weeks until the body begins to liquefy under the influence of whatever matter the entity has pumped into it. The process only ceases when the body begins to liquefy, eventually leaving behind nothing but a thick, homogeneous liquid, which will suddenly disappear soon after. How it disappears and where it goes is unknown, but I can make an unpleasant guess. Chemical analysis of some of this liquid has identified it as the substance that makes up 80% of the sample of tastes like those forgotten. It would appear that this particular flavor of chewing gum and Soylent Green have a key ingredient in common: people. No other facilities have been discovered at this point, so it is uncertain whether the key ingredients in other gum flavors are quite as macabre. Following the discovery of this facility, the Foundation cross-referenced its communication archives for any potential mentions of the facility or facilities like it. This investigation uncovered a surprisingly relevant phone call hidden in the archives. The call was made on June 2nd, 1999, from a payphone about 2 kilometers from the facility discovered in 2003. The recording contains one single unidentified male voice, and a transcription of the call's contents is included.
Herrick, this is Davis. I'm all done with the psychopomps here. We redirected the output to the location you wanted. Weren't any problems there. The goo should start arriving to you shortly. About your other order,
I'm at
you
money
haven't
cap.
spotted some nano hives in Budapest. I'm heading out there tomorrow. They should do nicely for your task after some tinkering. Make sure there won't be any issues with my payment this time. If your contacts at the factory are unwilling, I can always find someone else. Call you in 2 weeks.
Any discovery and seizure of SCP-1200 instances must be performed by the FDA under CFR Title 21. Once the instances are in the possession of the FDA, these samples will be replaced with non-anomalous duplicates, and the originals are to be transferred to Foundation Site 197. SCP-1200-A instances do not require food or oxygen to survive, and therefore are to be kept contained in individual reinforced containers, which are stored in the I-TL-1 wing of Site 197. 2 days after the SCP-1200-A base facility was dismantled, the SCP Foundation received a series of packages. These packages were delivered to several facilities, and all contained the same thing, a new, previously undocumented flavor of gum. This gum was completely colorless, and the packaging read, "Tastes like normalcy." Test subjects who chewed the gum said that it had no noticeable flavor at all, and no anomalous effects occurred. It seems that the creators of Tastes Like Chewing Gum took notice of the Foundation's investigation
The
and
hell is
decided
that?
to create a custom flavor, or lack thereof, for the organization. The identity of the company's higher-ups, or the gum's creators, is still unknown. Unfortunately, the trail has gone cold for now. But don't lose hope. It's possible more facilities are out there, waiting to be discovered. Keep that dream alive, investigators, and don't let me burst your bubble. Get it? You like bubblegum? Well, there's a reason I became a researcher and not a comedian. Check out the Dr. Bob Patreon and become a junior researcher today.
Don't let me burst your bubble.
This is an Ocarina of Time and Majora's Mask combined randomizer that randomizes the actual NPCs in both games. So what exactly is an NPC? NPC stands for non-playable character, and refers to all the characters that you can find scattered throughout the different areas of the game. So what exactly happens to the game when you randomize the NPCs? Well, the first thing you're going to notice, both games will be a barren wasteland, with no NPCs found anywhere. This means areas like the Castletown Market or even Clocktown are going to be completely abandoned. And in order to start populating the different areas,
Majin Phil, you're not spooky. What are you doing here? Do I want more SCP? Is there anyone other than Dr. Bob? Here's one.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Dr. Miller, and the SCP we're going to be looking at today is SCP-7819. Object Class, Keter, Uncontained. Special Containment Procedures. If you are currently under the influence of SCP-7819, please immediately refer to Addendum 1. SCP-7819 is still under active study. If you believe you have come into contact with it, contact the research lead immediately. Description: SCP-7819 is a predatory location that manifests along exits of the United States numbered highway system in the contiguous United States. SCP-7819's appearance is generally fixed. It presents as a small roadside hotel or motel, though the exact layout may vary, advertising vacant rooms, always identified by exterior signage as the Rest Easy Inn. Several conditions must be met for SCP-7819 to manifest for a driver. The time between midnight and 4 a.m., local time zone. The driver of the vehicle must have been driving for over 5 hours, discounting small breaks. The driver must be a past or present Foundation employee. The driver must be alone in the vehicle. Upon driving near SCP-7819, the driver will begin to feel a deep-seated sense of fatigue and tiredness. It is unclear whether this is a natural reaction to driving for several hours and seeing an opportunity for a break, or an anomalous phenomenon caused by SCP-7819 to lure drivers in. Regardless, this fatigue will continue as the driver pulls off the highway and into the parking lot of the inn. Should the driver drive past SCP-7819, the sense of fatigue will remain, though through unknown means their vehicle will be seamlessly transported several miles backward, often without their realization. They will drive past SCP-7819 again, be transported backward again, and this process will continue until they park inside SCP-7819. The driver will not be able to escape this phenomenon until they exit their vehicle, enter SCP-7819, and perform several requisite activities. These activities vary, but SCP-7819's many manifestations have provided a relatively dependable action plan for performing the rituals and surviving SCP-7819. If you are currently under the influence of SCP-7819, please proceed through Addendum 1. Remain calm and do not rush. Accuracy and efficiency is more important for survival than speed. Good luck.
Darkness, huh?
SCP-7819 Survival Guide. Up to date to March 26, 1996. Space. Parking lot. Instructions. Bring your car into an empty parking space. Try to select one that's surrounded by other vehicles. To separate yourself from the pack would attract attention. Once you park, exit your vehicle. Take only what you need. Whatever device you are reading or listening to this document on, your cellular phone, keys, purse or wallet, and a bag containing some toiletries and essentials. Luggage and clothing will slow you down. If you have been equipped with a firearm or own one privately, do not take it with you. Spend some time in the parking lot before entering the lobby. Observe the other parked cars around you. You will note inconsistencies, such as wheels made of wood, unclear jumbles where logos and brand marks should be, and shapes or designs that do not correspond to any actual vehicles produced by automotive companies. Avoid looking through the windows. If there is a large burning vehicle in the parking lot, do not investigate it further. If at all possible, pretend it is not there. Enter the lobby before the fire goes out.
I followed protocol. Pulled my Forerunner into a parking spot of this dingy sex motel. The last parking spot, actually. The lot was completely full otherwise. I grab a few things I have and squeeze out of my car. Parked next to this big Dodge Caravan, except, wait. No, I'm not. It's like you described a caravan to someone else, and they described it to someone else, and then that person had to make a model of what they had in mind out of paper mache. I accidentally knocked a hand against it and realized that it was made out of some kind of plaster. And it was hollow. I got curious, so I started investigating the other cars. All like this, logos and designs that look like cars on you going up, but took a closer look, and it's all nonsense. A facade, literally. I wasn't scared or anything, but it did put me on edge. Like how, when you know someone is trying to put you at ease, you put your hackles up.
Space. Lobby. Instructions. Upon entering the lobby, make your way to the front desk. It will be unoccupied. You may ring the bell once if the sound brings you comfort. Wait in the lobby without exiting it. Hum your favorite song to yourself as you wait. The silence in the lobby has been described as oppressive. Stop humming when you become aware of the noises coming from behind the counter. Hop the counter. There should be a closed door.
Fucking hell.
Rattling as though someone is on the other side. Listen to the sounds and note them down. When they get louder, repeatedly slam your fist against the door. Do not speak. Eventually, you will be slipped a key to a room. This may not work on the first attempt. Repeat it until you succeed. Say thank you and depart.
No idea what's going on. Door's firmly locked. I can just hear through it, and the paper-thin walls. Pretty filthy noises. Soft enough to where I have to press my ear against the door to hear anything. Wet slapping like someone's thumping a drenched towel against the ground over and over. There's this periodic wet coughing. The slapping stops during the coughing. Also, this moaning. It sounds in pain, like someone's starving to death. Rises and falls in pitch, but it's always there. I can hear whispering too. And sometimes the moaning and whispering and coughing are all at the same time. How many people are in there? I tried rattling the doorknob and it all stopped. All of it except for the moaning. I froze, and after a few seconds they went back into it. F***ing weird as shit.
Space. Elevator. Instructions. Your room will be inevitably on a higher floor, and you will be unable to find stairs, forcing you to use the elevator. You will notice that the buttons are in an inexplicable pattern, and have unclear writing on them. Press whichever one feels right. There will never be another person in the elevator with you. If you see someone, be aware that they are not human. Treat them with the appropriate level of caution. Do not remove your eyes from them, and always stand with your back against a wall. If the figure resembles an older, clean-cut man wearing an expensive suit and overcoat, do not enter the elevator. It will smile at you, compliment your appearance, and hold the door for you. It will do this for up to several minutes, repeatedly attempting to convince you to enter. Politely but firmly tell it that you are just passing through, and will wait for the next one. Stand beyond the threshold. It cannot pursue you outside of the elevator. Eventually, it will move on. If the figure resembles a middle-aged woman in hiking gear, you may enter the elevator and ride it to your destination. The elevator ride will take much longer than it should, up to half an hour. Do not panic, and reciprocate the woman's attempts to make conversation. Do not be honest with her. Lie openly and brazenly about every possible detail, including obvious ones such as your ethnicity and age. She appreciates this. If
Oops.
the figure resembles a younger vagrant, it is safe to enter the elevator. They will not speak, but may offer you a hug. Accepting this has no consequences and is left to your discretion. When you arrive at your floor, they
Free
may
hugs.
offer a small trinket such as a tin duck or ceramic ashtray. Accept it gratefully and keep it close at hand.
My nerves are on fire. I was lucky I pulled the vagrant card instead of the Wall Street anglerfish card at least. They seemed nice. Couldn't have been older than 19 or 20, dressed in clothes completely worn through. I got in, and we were standing next to each other heading up to my floor when he reached out. I just sort of let it happen, and he hugged me. A proper hug. Haven't been hugged like that in a long time. Didn't say a word, just hugged me for a few seconds like he knew I needed it. Stepped back, handed me a matchbox filled with leaves, and then the doors were closing and he was gone.
Space. Hallways. Instructions. You will exit out of the elevator into a hallway of some kind. Checking your room key is pointless. It will either not have a room number or have an entirely impossible one. Your room will make itself known to you when you find it. As such, begin walking down the hallway. Resist the urges to investigate the other rooms in the hallway. The doors have peepholes in them, and making eye contact may invite unwelcome attention. Keep your eyes focused down, and ignore any feelings of being observed as you proceed down the hall. Avoid making noise. The other guests are sleeping. The hallway is generally not linear, and you may find various other spaces. Eventually, you will arrive at a crossroads. These will occur regardless of whether the exterior topology of SCP-7819 allows for it, and are suspected to be incongruous spaces. As such, it is advised not to remain in them for more than a few minutes at most. Personnel who have dallied in the crossroads report dull headaches and paranoia. This is best addressed by picking a direction at random and beginning to walk down it. It is unclear whether SCP-7819 adapts to one's mind or vice versa, but this has been the most effective method for arriving at one's room. You will know it when you see it.
I have no idea how long I was walking. At least 40 minutes, but that was after I started checking my watch. Just endless shag carpet and flickering yellow lighting and shitty commercial art on the walls. I thought it would just be one long hallway, but it wasn't. I mean, it's fast, it was.
Forgot about
but
that
then
guy.
it ended and took a sharp right turn, and then a left, and then down a set of stairs, past a smoking lounge through a little walkway. Didn't have any sense of consistency to the construction. Just felt like a weird amalgamation of every hotel I've ever been in, glued together without thought. Eventually, it started getting really bizarre. The carpet went from drab beige to like the pattern you find on bus seats. There were curtains, but they were nailed to the wall so they couldn't be opened. Every successive set of doors kept getting lifted a few inches off the ground until they were literally halfway into the ceiling. This isn't a place people were meant to be.
Space. Room. Instructions. Use your key and enter your room. You will immediately feel a chillness in the air. This is normal. Do not close the door behind you until you have turned on all the lights and ensured you are alone in the room. There may be a door to an adjoining room. Move a piece of furniture in front of this door, or otherwise find a way to barricade it. The layout of the room will vary and be completely idiosyncratic, such as having mismatched furniture sets, dozens of chairs filling the room with nothing else, or being difficult to traverse. Do your best to get comfortable. The bathroom may be locked from the inside, but this is not a point of concern unless you have reason to believe someone is inside. If you do, bar the door to the best of your ability. You may keep the lights on or dim them, but get into a bed and pull the covers over yourself. If the room has a television, you may put something on to calm your nerves. Personnel have suggested home and garden television delivers the best results. Eventually, you will fall asleep.
What the fuck?
My room had 3 beds, fanning out from and facing a single focal point. A shitty microwave that wasn't even plugged in. Absolutely baffling. Like it was designed by a person with no understanding of how humans lived. I got in and made sure everything was fine, then put my stuff down. Took a leak, which is when I found out the bathroom was fake. The plumbing wasn't attached and the toilet and shower were made out of like plywood, like props on a movie set. Hardly the weirdest thing so far, but for some reason it just f***ed with me. I got out and slipped into bed. Almost immediately I felt insanely tired despite the circumstances. I could barely keep my eyes open, and right as I was drifting off, it occurred to me that I hadn't checked under the beds.
Space. Pool. Instructions. You will wake up in the hotel hot tub. There will be no one else in the indoor pool area, and you will feel physically awake but mentally exhausted. This is normal. A small radio set on a nearby table may be playing a song from your childhood, but the signal will be of poor quality. Try to tune it better if you can, but do not change the station. Do not change the station. You may exit the hot tub and inspect
Don't
the
change the
pool.
station.
It will generally be of idiosyncratic shape and construction. You will find that the surface tension of the water is much stronger. It has formed a thick, tight membrane that prevents objects from breaking through it. As such, do not step into the water. You will drown. Underneath the membrane, you may see shapes moving around. Ignore them. Return to the hot tub, re-entering it. This time, completely submerge yourself. Despite your expectations, once you go under, it will not feel warm. It will feel painfully, bitingly cold, as though stepping into ice water. Ignore it and open your eyes. You will find that the hot tub descends several feet deeper than expected. Swim to the bottom and grab the small object you see lying on the floor. Inspect it after emerging from the water.
Fuck.
You will find your clothes neatly folded on a nearby table. Dry and redress yourself before departing for your room.
I've always loved hotel pools. Something about them. I don't know. You'd think everyone would go for it, but for whatever reason it feels like I'm the only one who's ever in one. So it's just a nice, calming space for me to sink into the water and be utterly alone. This wasn't like that. This felt wrong in some interminable, indescribable way. Every facet of it seemed designed for maximum discomfort. The echo bouncing off the ceiling and water being close enough to your own voice to trip you up. The angles and contours of the pool were
How did I
unnatural.
not
like
target
someone
the
had never
thing right
seen
in
a
front of
pool
me?
before. Literally hundreds of life preservers hanging off the walls. The main pool was unnerving. The membrane on top made it so that everything underneath the surface was blurry and hard to make out. But still, I could see 3 or 4 blurry shapes moving around, slimming back and forth. One of them was person-shaped. At first, I thought it was another person, trapped or something, and tried to get a little closer. Didn't step into the water, but I put my hand against the film. It slammed up on the other side and pressed its palm where mine was. Held it there for a moment. Then it starts slamming its fists against the membrane wildly, trying to tear through it like a wild animal. I can hear it screeching from under the water. I screamed, scrabbled backward, grabbed my things and ran. Thankfully, I only checked out the other pool after getting the object from the hot tub. It was my engagement ring. My engagement ring. I lost it years ago. Flashed it down the toilet of a hotel I was staying at.
Space. Breakfast area. Instructions. On your way back to your room, you will pass by the breakfast area attached to the lobby. Despite it being still night outside, it will be open and the lights on. Enter. There will be a large amount of food laid out on the counters. Most of it will be inedible in some form, though there are usually some edible foodstuffs. Ignore all of them. Do not feel guilty about doing so, and instead make your way to the only other person in the breakfast area. Join them at their table as they eat. They will attempt to persuade you to stay. Politely but firmly deny them. It will make your heart hurt, but it is necessary should you wish to leave. They will repeatedly do this, and you must repeatedly deny them until they stop asking.
Plastic fruit, styrofoam waffles, muddy water instead of coffee. I'm not exaggerating, it was literally fake food, all laid out and presented like a typical continental breakfast. Very weird, but I followed the instructions, ignored all of it, and headed for the man at the table. Older guy, salt and pepper hair, looks like every dad. The only sound in the room was his chewing, and the dead air on the television as it softly played static. He seemed excited to see me once he noticed me. Asked me to please take a seat. So I did, opposite him. Started bombarding me with questions. Where was I from? Where was I going? How long I'd been on the road? But not sinister edge of the people in the elevator. Genuine, sincere, wanting to know if I was all right and having a nice time. I tried my best not to feel bad about ignoring all of his questions and just saying, I want to leave. I got the sense he'd heard this a lot, and he was persistent about it. What can I do to make your stay better? Sorry, I say, but I want to leave. You're not enjoying the amenities? They're fine. I still want to leave. Don't you think this is nicer than having to deal with the troubles of life? It's a resort. Maybe, but I prefer the troubles over whatever this is. Fighting to joke down the parts of me saying he has a point. Eventually, he just goes crestfallen. Is there anything else I can do to make you stay? No. He seemed to accept that. Told me to spend the rest of my night. Check out in the morning. He was still sitting there when I left. Alone.
Space. Checkout. Instructions. When you wake up the next morning, late, regardless of when you fell asleep, gather your things and depart your room. You will find that the layout of SCP-7819 has shifted dramatically and is much easier to navigate. Several doors in the hallway will be hanging open, and you will pass cleaning carts as though housekeeping is doing their rounds. There will be no one around except you. Head to the elevators and back down to the lobby. There will similarly be no one at the front desk, but place your key down. Depart SCP-7819. Get in your vehicle. The parking lot will now be empty, and get back onto the highway. Driving until you can get into contact with your nearest site, and report your SCP-7819 encounter.
Fuck.
The light of day makes things feel a lot different. The labyrinth of the carpeted hallway just felt odd now. Not sinister. I went downstairs, turned my key into the empty desk. The breakfast area was closed again. I stepped out the doors. The sun was shining. Got in my car, got back on I-10, put the hotel in my rearview mirror, and then as soon as it came, it was gone. My parents and I used to take a lot of road trips when I was a kid, so we stayed in a lot of motels. You know the kind. Shitty roadside lodging where the rooms are cramped and the prices are dirt cheap. Years-old carpet. Unfashionable furniture from the 70s. Sinks that stick out into the room and hard mattresses. Not a resort. Just a place to lay your head down for the night.
Fuck.
Transitory spaces, where you're meant to come and go. Not to stick around. Motels are not home, obviously. They try their best to feel like they're home, but not particularly well, which is why they have such a unique vibe of their own. A corporate design space calculated to put you at ease. They're spaces for humans to inhabit, but there's nothing really human about them. 7819 embodies that pretty well. Something that doesn't really understand humans, trying fruitlessly to lure them in, with fractured memories of motel rooms and hot tubs. I don't know. I don't know what 7819 is, really. I can only make guesses from what I experienced. Like I said, I took a lot of road trips as a kid, and there are some deeply, deeply strange things that live on the edges of these highways.
If you follow these instructions, you will exit with no issue. If you haven't,
Fuck.
we do not blame you for staying. Goodbye.
Fucking, why am I aiming so low? This is not a problem I had before.
I would like to give a special thank you to Zargaran, Big Sip, Old Crop Guy, James Saba, Irish Wristwatch, Lost Boy, Signar, your local Foundation agent, Zazapan.
Listen to this guy's whole Patreon list.
Dean Dingus, That Loser, Braided Peach, Ruin O'Brien, Grimnir, Extra Moments 123, Swift Raw, Ordus Malleus, Big Booty Judy, Desmond Kane, and Oscuro Vision. If you would like a special thank you at the end of each of my videos, and some other cool stuff as well, visit patreon.com/The Vulcan. Thank you.
Thanks, Big Booty Judy. Fuck. Should have seen that coming, but... Oh, and then I just fuck it up for no good reason. Doing a great job. Well, fuck. Didn't know I could bait him into going back up there. That's unfortunate.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Dr. Miller, and the SCP we're going to be looking at today is SCP-7122.
What the fuck?
Object class, safe.
Fucking target him, please.
Special containment procedures. SCP-7122 is to be stored in a secure safe inside a standard containment room. Said room is to have 2 armed guards posted outside of it and is only able to be accessible by level 3 staff or higher. Any access to SCP-7122's containment room is to be reported to the site director immediately, who can initiate a lockdown if deemed necessary. It is thus recommended that the director be informed before accessing SCP-7122's containment room. As SCP-7122 is an inanimate object that needs to be handled for anomalous effects to occur, there is no threat of it breaching containment by itself. However, the Department of Intelligence has assessed that there is a possibility that the item may be an object of interest for hostile groups of interest. In case of a containment breach, the entire wing of Site-717 containing SCP-7122 is to initiate a lockdown, with all light as well as internet and intranet access being cut off immediately in order to prohibit utilization of SCP-7122's anomalous effects. Foundation staff within the compromised area are to be advised not to use any source of light for the entire duration of the lockdown. The only personnel allowed to access the locked down section of Site-717 in case of a containment breach is the on-site tactical response team. Upon recontainment, all electronic devices capable of storing digital data and media, as well as SCP-7122, are to be investigated for any instances of .NAO files. Only after all results have turned out negative, personnel are to be released from lockdown, and both internet and intranet access is to be turned back on. Description: SCP-7122 is a Nikon brand D3500 DSLR camera, serial number with a standard 18 to 55mm kit lens. SCP-7122's anomalous effects manifest when it is used to photograph a person. Upon taking a picture, an image file in the format .ANO is created. Said files can be viewed without any special software on all common media devices. Going to the metadata will seemingly reveal nothing out of the ordinary. However, instead of displaying information about the file such as file name or the time, date, and location of its creation, such information will instead be displayed about the subject depicted in the photograph. Additionally, a field can be found at the bottom of the window saying, "Further Properties." Investigation of these properties will open up a separate window with a sporadically expanding, seemingly nonsensical, and random array of numbers and letters. It is theorized that the extent of these properties directly correlates to the subject's age and experiences. Although most of the .ANO files ranges from 175 kilobytes to 3.5 megabytes, the average amount of data found within the Further Properties section is estimated to be around 1 petabyte. All Foundation efforts to decode said data have so far proven
times 2.
unsuccessful. Further anomalous effects have become apparent when the files are altered or deleted. When a .ANO file is inserted into video editing software and a spoken audio track is combined with said file, the subject in the photograph will initiate motion matching the spoken tracks, while the recorded voice will instantly change as well to match the voice of the depicted subject. However, tests have shown that the person in the photo is the only one affected by this, meaning that the rest of the picture will not initiate any sort of movement. Deletion of a .nao file will result in the immediate termination of the subject in the picture. Tests have shown that this effect only applies to the pictured person, even in crowd scenarios. If no specific subject exists in such a picture, no anomalous effects will manifest. The Foundation has not yet been able to determine the medical cause of death of the test subjects. SCP-7122's effects also apply to various animals, see test logs, and can be avoided by creating a copy of the original NAO file in advance. Deleting the metadata of a .nao file will not result in the subject's death. However, the subject will become unresponsive and cease almost all motor functions in a catatonic state. Tests have shown that subjects affected by this are not incapable of actions like walking, but rather simply do not do so for most of the time. Discovery. SCP-7122 came to the Foundation's attention after a sudden rise of unexplained deaths and reported cases of anonymous blackmail in Gustavsburg, Sweden and the surrounding area. The SCP Foundation dispatched 2 local field agents to investigate the situation. In cooperation with Swedish law enforcement agencies, Agent Roland Jansen and Agent Carl Berg subsequently managed to deduce that the cases were linked to Jens Eklund, a local amateur photographer and videographer and drug addict. Agents Jansen and Berg were ordered to investigate the property under the
Infernal
guise of an
dinosaur.
inspection following a short unrelated blackout in Gustavsburg. After they were able to determine that the camera was the object of interest, it was given the official designation of SCP-7122.
Oh, Jesus
and a
Christ.
tactical response team was dispatched to recover the item under the pretext of a drug raid. Jens Eklund was fatally wounded
Okay, so
after using SCP-7122
failing
to
to
kill 2 TAC rep operators.
ow.
Test logs. Test 7122-01. Subject D9669. Description and results. Subject was photographed using SCP-7122. Photograph was deleted. D9669 died on the spot. Test 7122-02. Subject D9671. Description and results. Subject was photographed in absolute darkness using SCP-7122. Photograph was deleted. No change noted on subject. Test 7122-03.
Fuck.
D9671. Descriptions and results. Subject was photographed in absolute darkness using SCP-7122 while being lit by an infrared flashlight. Photograph was deleted. D9671.
This sucks.
Test 7122-04. Subject D9672. Description and results. Subject was photographed using SCP-7122. External copy of .ano file was created. Original file deleted.
No.
No change noted on subject.
Fuck.
7122-05. Subjects D9672, D7673, D9874, and D9238. Description and results. Subjects were told to move around the room and make casual conversation. The entire group was photographed in a wide angle using SCP-7122. No subject
This
was
guy's
photographed
kicking my
in the
ass.
Photograph was then deleted. No change noted on either subject. Test 7122-06. Subject D9672. Description and results. Copy of D9672's ANO file was inserted into video editing software. The file began to visually mimic spoken audio track. No change noted on subject. Test 7122-07. Subject D9672. Description and results. Copy of
Pick it up.
D9672's
Pick it
ANO
up.
file was inserted
Pick it
into
up.
video editing software.
Can I not
File
pick it up
began
because
to
time is
visually mimic
frozen?
Spoken parts of inserted music tracks. No change noted on subject. Note: SCP-7122's ANO files mimic spoken audio tracks to an absolute perfect extent. Were it not for the unmoving background, it would be impossible to distinguish between an edited ANO file and an authentic video
Okay,
file.
so I
This
can't
anomalous effect
pause.
could be of great use to the SCP Foundation. Test 7122-08. Subject D9672.
Hate this.
Description and results. Edited metadata of D9672's ANO file to display a different day of creation. Error message displaying the words "Administrator permission required" appeared. Metadata reverted back to its original state after closing the error message. Foundation IT experts have not yet been
It's a
able to
rough
pass
boss
this.
rush.
Test 71.
What do I even get for that?
Subject D9672. Description and results. Deleted metadata of D9672's ANO file. D9672 instantly ceased all motor functions.
That makes sense.
Brain activity aside from vital areas. Subject was described by researchers to be in a catatonic state. Test 7122.
I just want to farm money for a bit.
D9672. Description and results. Subject brought to stand on two legs. Subject stood on two legs on its own. Subject was then pushed lightly. Subject able to recover from a push, likely via a form of muscle memory. Subject was pushed hard and subsequently fell face first to the floor, fracturing its nose and jaw. D9672 did not react to the likely resulting physical pain. Test 7122-11. Subject D9672. Description and results. Subject connected to EEG and fMRI scanners respectively, and subjected to a large dose of pain by having both femurs fractured independently through. Both EEG and fMRI scans showed next to no activity in the frontal lobe, the insular and cerebral cortex, all of which are largely important to human consciousness and emotional response to external stimuli. Upon the introduction of pain, N1 waves could be measured in the subject's brain, while there was almost a complete lack of N2 and P2 waves. As soon as the pain was inflicted, both the brain and the autonomous nervous system reacted on a physical level by releasing adrenaline and other hormones. Despite this, the scans of D9672's brain indicated that while it responded somewhat normally on a physical level, the emotional and conscious component of its perception of pain seemed to be non-existent. Note: in order to retain a professional climate, personnel are discouraged from referring to SCP-7122 as Soul Killer. As fitting as that description may be, personnel are also reminded that the Foundation does currently not know whether such a thing as a soul even exists. Test 7122-12.
Fuck is Bodger?
One male chimpanzee, pan troglodytes. Description and results.
Armory.
Chimpanzee was phonographed using SCP-7122. Photograph was deleted.
Guess this
died on the
one.
spot. Test 7122-13. Subject.
Are you
one
Bodger?
female dog, golden retriever. Description and results. Dog was photographed using SCP-7122. Photograph was deleted. Subject died on the spot. Test 7122-14. Subject. One female house cat, Felis catus. Description and results.
400.
Photographed using SCP-7122. Photograph was deleted. Subject died on the spot. Test 7122-15. Subject. One male African bullfrog, Pyxicephalus adspersus. Description and results. Frog was photographed using SCP-7122. Photograph was deleted. No change on subject. Test 7122-16. Subject. One female fire ant, Solenopsis. Description and results. Fire ant was photographed using SCP-7122. Photograph was deleted. No change noted on subject. Note: the anomalous effects of SCP-7122 mostly seem to be limited to living beings with a certain amount of intelligence and consciousness. However, the effects of deleting metadata vary largely among non-humanoid species. Test 7122-17. Approved by Site Director. Subjects D7673 and D9874. description, and results. Both subjects were asked to fill out a questionnaire about themselves, their personality, as well as very specific moments and memories of their life only they knew about. D7673 and D9874 were then photographed individually using SCP-7122. D7673's metadata was copied and deleted afterwards, with the same being done to D9874. Both entered characteristic catatonic state as all previous subjects. The subjects then had their metadata swapped and quickly reverted back to a
Guess I
rather
should have
normal
refilled my
state.
bombs.
D7673 and D974 were subsequently asked to answer questions about information they had previously disclosed in the questionnaire. Evaluation of their answers showed that both now only knew about what the biologically other should be knowing, and claimed to be that same person. Both subjects went on to express extreme confusion and severe distress, stating they were in the wrong body. When asked about what happened after the deletion of their metadata, D7673 as well as D9874 became extremely agitated and would enter a state of panic while profusely refusing to elaborate any further about the topic, with D9874 even becoming violent. Both subjects had to be sedated and were returned to their cells for the night. D7673 and D9874 went on to commit by that same night. Test 7122-18, approved by Site Director. Subjects D9672 and D7673. Description and results. D9672, who was still in a catatonic state and recovering from the physical effects of Test 7122-11, had his lost metadata replaced with that of the late D7673. D9672, from now on referred to as D7673, awoke soon after in great distress, showing signs of severe psychological trauma. D7673 behaved erratic and started screaming approximately half a minute after waking up. Subject stopped screaming after 5 minutes and died 10 minutes later from cardiac arrest, multiple organ failure, and severely damaged cerebral tissue, all suspected to have been caused, at least in some part, by extreme psychosomatic effects of the psychological trauma and/or the numerous transfers of metadata. Addendum 7122-01. As per order of Site Director Siegler, researchers are to refrain from performing experiments similar to Test 7122-11 unless necessary and approved by Director Siegler himself, or at least 2 Level 4 personnel. This rule will stay in effect until SCP-7122's anomalous effects are understood to a fuller extent. Addendum 7122-02. The Department of Intelligence has requested utilization of SCP-7122 by field agents in order to assure cooperation of influential non-Foundation individuals and to be able to terminate them or hostile person of interests if necessary. The department has also requested permission to set up several databases with ANO files of said individuals. Proposal is pending. The following document is classified at Security Clearance Level 4. Any unauthorized access is strictly forbidden and will result in disciplinary action. Project Balder. Access to Project Balder is restricted to Level 4 7122. By order of the O5 Council and the Department of Intelligence, personnel with lower clearance levels are prohibited from viewing this file. Following the discovery of SCP-7122 and its anomalous effects, the Department of Intelligence has proposed utilization of the camera for the purpose of applied influence and liquidation of persons of interest. This proposal has since been granted by the O5 Council, and the Department of Intelligence has been provided with personnel and funding for further experiments. After the results of Tests 7122-17 and SCP-7122-18 have suggested that SCP-7122 may be used to transfer a person's consciousness to a different person's body, including post-mortem, the O5 Council ordered enhanced testing of this effect for possible containment and security appliances. SCP-7122 has so far been used to capture 7 and terminate hostile persons of interest, while also having been used to influence important non-Foundation individuals. D-Class testing. Tests 7122-17 and 7122-18 have shown severe side effects with the transfer of metadata. The following tests seek to find a way of negating these effects. Test DOI 7122-01. Subjects D5389 and D8376. Test description. Subjects were told to memorize one poem each beforehand as a way to determine if a transfer of consciousness via metadata had occurred. If successful, subjects were to be dosed with medical ketamine or similar euphoric drugs to reduce the level of trauma seen in Test 7122-17. Results. When asked, D-Class personnel recited each other's poem after their metadata had been swapped, thus proving that a transfer of consciousness had been successful. Subjects expressed discomfort about the situation, but not to such an extent as seen in D76-73 and D98-74. Still, the subjects became highly agitated and refused to elaborate when asked about what happened during the exchange of metadata. Conclusion. Psychedelic drugs that induce euphoric states are feasible to reduce the apparent traumatic effects of a transfer of consciousness. However, they do not manage to completely negate said problems, and the long-term effects of regular drug administration point to this not being a permanent solution. Still, as no test subjects had occurred, the test was deemed a success. Test DOI 7122-02. Subjects D4381 and D1768. Test description. Same as Test DOI 7122-01, however, subjects were placed under general anesthesia for the transfer of consciousness and dosed with heavy opiates afterwards. Results. D-Class personnel confirmed a successful transfer had occurred by reciting the correct poem, just as the participants of Test DOI 7122-01, D4381, and D1768 were uncomfortable with the situation. Unlike Test DOI 7122-01, subjects stated they were unable to recall anything about the process of the exchange of metadata. Still, Foundation psychologists determined that the effects of a subconscious trauma were present, though not overly obvious. Conclusion. Traumatic effects may be reduced further by artificially inducing a coma within subjects. The psychological trauma, however, is still a considerate factor that is to be eradicated if possible. Test DOI 7122-03.
Why are you not targeting?
Dr. Dominic Martin and D6578. Forward. Dr. Dominic Martin is a senior researcher of the Foundation, assigned to Project Balder with terminal lung cancer. Dr. Martin has volunteered as a test subject as a way to test possibilities of extending human life by transferring consciousness to another healthy body. Dr. Martin has declared he will not be placed under anesthesia and initially refused the administration of drugs in order to properly record and document what happens during the exchange of metadata. D6578 is a former Foundation employee of the administrative sector found guilty of espionage for a hostile group of interest. Test description. As the effects and risks of having one subject with and one without anesthesia are unknown, the transfer occurred without either subject being sedated. As per usual, both subjects memorized a different poem beforehand as a way of verifying a successful transfer of consciousness. Dr. Martin was then to report on what he could recall according to his own abilities. Results. D6578, who had purposely not been informed about the test's specific nature beforehand, awoke screaming in the body of Dr. Martin, while Dr. Martin, while visibly distressed, remained comparatively calm. D6578 was restrained, and after reciting the correct poem to confirm the transfer of consciousness, sedated. Dr. Martin requested the administration of anxiolytic medication. This request was granted. Additionally, Dr. Martin was also given a mild sedative for the following 2 days. On the 3rd day following the test, Dr. Martin resumed documentation on his journal, which he had started beforehand, in order to document
Yes.
the events of the transfer of metadata from his own perspective. The contents of his journal can be found
I have a
below.
lot of magic. I guess I could use it.
Passed away from lung cancer 3 weeks after the completion of the test, but was transferred into a new living body for interrogation. After a lack of cooperation and the failure of conventional and advanced interrogation methods, D6578 was terminated via fatal shot to the head and transferred into another body 3 hours later, causing D6578 to give in and provide the Foundation with the requested information in exchange for the permanent deletion of his entire file. Journal of Dr. Dominic Martin for Project Balder, Test DOI 712203. Date 2510.
Hello. My name is Dr. Dominic Martin. I am 56 years old, born in Hamburg. I have volunteered to be a test subject in an experiment about the transfer of human consciousness into another body. Thinking about it, were this not the Foundation, I'd probably go to a psychiatric ward for simply saying this sentence. I should perhaps note that the primary goal of this journal is not to provide an overly scientific or clinical documentation, as it aims to document my own subjective experiences and observations during this test. It is hoped that said observations will provide the Foundation with new insights for both psychological and practical applications. All that is currently known is that it is possible to bring the consciousness, or soul, if you believe that, of a person into the body of another by using a specific anomaly the Foundation has acquired. And apparently this process seems to have been severely traumatizing. Traumatizing enough that several D-Class personnel have committed afterwards. And every single test subject so far was either unable or outright refused to talk about what happened for the short time that their soul was deleted from our reality. So, why on earth would I volunteer for such an experiment? The answer is quite simple. I've been a chain smoker since I was a young man. Well, surprise. All those warnings that smoking causes cancer are true. Who would have guessed? I have terminal lung cancer, and my time is about to come, according to doctors. So, since I've been assigned to this project for quite some time, and my curiosity has always been morbid in nature, I figured I might as well just try to be a useful asset to this program. Let's just hope my mind doesn't end up as some kind of cerebral pudding. The test will begin in 2 days.
Date 2710.
I've just been photographed by the anomaly. Now there's no turning back. I will be restrained for the transfer. Apparently the owner of my new body is a spy of some hostile group of interest who was embedded in the Foundation, and they wanted to prevent him from fleeing once he's inside my body. Not that my broken body would be capable of running anyway. They see it as a kind of prison for him. Convenient. Convenient but cruel, in my honest opinion. I was told to memorize a poem, just like the test subjects before me, as a way of identifying me after the transfer. Standard procedure by now. The poem goes like this. Be not afraid in the face of change. Be courageous, standing like a wall. Though at first things may seem strange, and nothing familiar at all. There's a purpose in the bland and gray, though it may still seem far. You can make it through the day, no matter where you are. I don't recognize this poem. It seems very random. I wonder if one was selected for any specific purpose. Anyways, it's time to begin the test.
Date 3010.
Hello. My name is Dr. Dominic Martin, 56 years old, born in Hamburg. Well, not really. I'm actually 35 years old, born in my body, at least. The transfer of my consciousness has been successful. It has been quite the unpleasant experience, hence why I have requested anxiolytics for the time being. The transfer itself, well, How do I describe it? At first, there was a mild sense of unease, followed by a headache. Then, time started to slow down as both symptoms gradually became worse. I felt an intense pressure on my eyes and inside my head, accompanied by a strange pulling sensation, as if something inside of my body was pressing against its outside, trying to force its way through. Then, a sudden rip. There was darkness. Well, not actually darkness. It was colorful and black and white and gray and colorless all at the same time. Trying to describe it is like trying to define the color of a mirror. I saw geometry that didn't make sense, like squares with 5 sides or triangles seemingly comprised of 90-degree angles. I was in a place without space or time. I couldn't breathe because neither was there air, nor did I have a body to breathe. I was consciousness and unconsciousness at the same time, existing, vegetating through a reality I could not comprehend. I was in limbo. Time did not seem to exist. I may have been there for a few seconds, or hundreds upon hundreds of years. I do not know. Both felt the same. After a time I cannot define, I entered what felt like an intense fever dream. An array of illogical and random thoughts, words, sentences, and impressions infinitely repeating. I dreamt in a circle that I could not break out of. I don't know if I could even perceive that circle or my situation as a whole. Then began the memories. I lived through them like it was my first time experiencing them, and yet they often felt familiar, like deja vu. I thought I was alive, but my memories were not in exact order. I'd often jump in between them in nonsensical ways. Not all memories were true either. Some contradicted each other. All this causing me to question myself and my sanity. I've met people I knew were dead, or did not belong in my perceived timeline. These contradictions, however, made it possible for me to realize that none of this was real. At least, I think it wasn't. Having realized that, I focused on the poem I had memorized before. I used it like a mantra to try to hold on to my reality. I'm sure I could have done without it. I mean, the other D-class managed it as well. But I think it helped me deal better with my situation. Maybe it made it all less traumatic, in a sense. From what I've heard, I am dealing with it much better than he does. Thinking about it, I'm wondering even more now if there was a specific reason for the selection of my code. Entering the new body was an unsettling experience. I started to feel a spinning and pulling sensation. I felt sick. Then, like a curtain, this not reality I was in gave away to our reality. My eyes were open, but I could not yet see. Everything spun around, and it felt like the insides of my body were rearranging themselves. For what felt like days, but were merely seconds, I was in terrible pain. I could feel my brain. It felt like it was burning, melting. I think those symptoms may be very real, as they perfectly match those that killed D7673 in test 712218. I tasted purple? I heard triangles
Tasted
and
purple.
the synesthesia took some time to go away. My theory is that those symptoms were my consciousness, or my soul, if you want, adapting to my new body, or vice versa. Probably similar to the transplantation of a new organ. My theory is that unless the brain and body are in a specific state, they may reject the new consciousness in some way, which is probably what led to the known complications of a transfer. It's a wild guess, but maybe surgical precautions like deep brain stimulation and general anesthesia could help with that. I should maybe add that I could not initially remember everything about the transfer. It was like waking up in the morning, where you actually have to think about what you dreamt, because you can't really recall all of it at first. With me, since I knew what was going on, this was probably pretty easy when compared to other test subjects. I only seemed to start remembering when something triggered their memories about it. So, amnestics may also be helpful to minimize both physical and psychological harm.
Following test DOI 712203, the recommendations of Dr. Martin have been tested and were found to be effective. Dr. Martin was subsequently administered mild amnestics at his own request. Since the transfer could now be carried out safely, the Department of Intelligence was given permission by the O5 Council to initiate Operation Soulmate. Operation Soulmate. Operation Soulmate is an intelligence and security operation carried out by the Foundation's Department of Intelligence. Operation Soulmate is aimed at gaining intelligence about enemy groups of interest, as well as the secure permanent imprisonment of key hostile agents. In preparation for Operation Soulmate, field agents of the Foundation are tasked with recruiting subjects fitting the following criteria: paralyzed, preferably from the neck down, living in severe poverty, from a very rural area and/or a third world country, very few or no family members, very few or no friends or similar acquaintances, preferably no terminal illnesses, age between 12 and 55. Ages outside of the specified range need to be approved beforehand. If a fitting subject is found, field agents are to introduce themselves as government officials or as medical staff of various humanitarian aid NGOs, including, and offer the subject the participation in an experimental medical procedure to fully cure their disability. If subjects refused, they are to be administered amnestics and released. If subjects agreed, they are taken to Site 717, Jasmine Peninsula, Germany, and prepared for a transfer of consciousness. Any acquaintances of the subject are to be informed a week later that the subject was killed in an accident involving the ambulance vehicle they were transported in and that the body could not be recovered. Preparations for transfer include implantation of a deep brain stimulation.
What the hell's happening to me?
Memorization of an individual poem, memorization of a telephone number belonging to the Foundation, and limited mental preparation about the procedure itself. Subjects are not to be informed about the existence of the Foundation under any circumstances, to guarantee the integrity of the veil of secrecy. If not yet the case, field agents are then to use SCP-7122 to photograph the target person of interest. For the transfer, subjects are to be placed under general anesthesia inside an interrogation cell.
Oh, I targeted him.
Told beforehand that it is absolutely integral they find a telephone and call the specified number as soon as possible after waking up.
Feel like I need to use the bow on this guy.
Track and locate the phone call and provide instructions to link up with Foundation personnel, or if necessary, dispatch field agents to return them to a nearby site for further treatment.
Fuck.
If the subject is recovered, they are to be administered amnestics and given a cover-up story about their new life. Only once it was certain that the subject itself believes said story, they are to be released from Foundation custody. Documentation about Operation Soulmate can be found below.
That sucked.
The following is a list of persons of interest captured during Operation Soulmate, alongside additional basic information. Further information such as intelligence gained or subsequent operations of the DOI have been excluded from this list due to secrecy and irrelevance to the file. Operation Soulmate 1. Subject: Yaroslav Gordov, 22, from Siberia, Russia. Both legs amputated due to diabetes. Lived with his father, a Russian army officer, recruited after a doctor's appointment. Person of interest: Louis Marcelo Rouzet, 47.
I'm not gonna win, but
collaborator of Marshall Carter and Dark Limited. Notable incidents: none. Subject was
guess to
recovered
avoid
and
adding
anesthetized.
death counters is the
Conclusion
reason.
of
Oh god,
operation,
it's
operational success.
ghost me.
Operation Soulmate 2. Subject: Aditya Biswas, 19, from Bangladesh. Paralyzed from the neck down. No family. Lived in a disabled person's residence from UNICEF. Person of interest: Vladislav Bortsov, 31, from Russia. Recruiter for a Sarkic cult within Russia. Now within Foundation custody. Notable incidents: none. Subject was recovered and amnesticized. Conclusion of operation: operational success. Operation Soulmate 3.
Ooh.
Subject: Sanoon Nugent, 49, from Thailand. Entire family and friend group died in a large fire at a wedding. Failed.
Please
An
target the
left him
fucker.
Paralyzed from neck down. Recruited straight from hospital. Person of interest: Maria Munoz Pereira, 45, from Argentina.
Is this actually hurting him?
Member of the Serpent's Hand, now within Foundation custody.
Serpent's Hand?
Incident. None. Subject was recovered and amnesticized. Conclusion of operation. Operational success. Operation Soulmate 4. Subject 12, from Xinjiang, China, separated from her family at a young age, paralyzed from neck down as a result of physical violence, recruited from Uyghur internment camp.
Oops.
Person of interest. Mid-tier operative of the Chaos Insurgency, now within Foundation custody. Notable incidents. Subject behaved unusual enough to arise suspicion before being recovered. Subject was terminated by a field agent to assure secrecy. Conclusion of operation. Limited operational success. Operation Soulmate 5. Subject 14, from Syria.
Oh yeah.
She died in IED explosion, which left her paralyzed from the waist down. Recruited from foster home for disabled children. Person of interest. Ahmed Mohammed Al-Hassin, 52, from Iran. Higher ranking ORIA officer, now within Foundation custody. Notable incidents. Subject apparently was mentally unstable before the transfer and committed despite precautions. Conclusion of operation. Limited operational success. Operation Soulmate 6. Subject Abu Bakar Wachuku, 35, from Niger. Paralyzed from waist down after a car crash that killed his family. Recruited from hospital. Person of interest. 43, from Canada. Priest of the Fifth Church,
nice.
now within
It's
Foundation
just an
custody.
upgrade.
Notable incidents. Subject
Well, except for
behaved unusual enough to arise suspicion. Subject was detained, interrogated, and killed by members of the Fifth Church before Foundation operatives could intervene.
what?
Note, as the subject was not aware about the existence of the Foundation, the information gained by the
What a
Fifth
weird
Church is most likely very limited.
chargeability.
Still, the operation is considered a failure. Conclusion of operation. Operational failure. Operation Soulmate 7. Subject redacted for the purpose of operational protection of Foundation operatives. Person of interest. High-ranking member of a Sarkic cult, now within Foundation custody. Notable incidents. Subject recovered without incident. Subject refused amnestics after having learned about the Foundation and offered to remain an informant embedded within the cult. After the necessary precautions and security measures were taken, he was officially reinserted into the cult and has since proven to be a reliable source of intel. Conclusion of operation. Great operational success. By order of the Ethics Committee, Operation Soulmate has been shut down due to its inhumane and unethical nature. Any similar operations are prohibited from being conducted until further notice.
Probably do this one now.
Verdict of the Ethics Committee regarding Operation Soulmate. After careful consideration, the Ethics Committee has come to the conclusion that while Operation Soulmate has undoubtedly been a full success for the SCP Foundation when it comes to intelligence on hostile forces, in doing so, it has also committed serious violations of human dignity. Although the Foundation does not currently know whether there is such a thing as a soul, it is safe to say that human consciousness is the closest thing to what one would call a soul. As such, entrapping a person's consciousness with a foreign paralyzed body defies every known concept of human dignity. Furthermore, Dr. Dominic Martin's journal, together with tests 712217, 18, DOI 7122-1-3, and Operation Soulmate 5 show that the deletion of metadata and transfer of consciousness are psychologically almost unbearable for the subject and lead to severe trauma, and in some cases, even if the end always justified the means, which in the opinion of the Ethics Committee is not the case here, the use of such methods for advanced interrogation would be highly questionable. The success of the Department of Intelligence does prove it right, which is why Project Boulder may persist. However, continuation of Operation Soulmate and all further operations of this kind are nevertheless prohibited on the basis just mentioned. We secure, we contain, we protect. from the Ethics Committee of the SCP Foundation.
SCP has ethics?
Okay. I think that about does it for
Wild.
today. Thank you for listening, if indeed you still are, and you're all dismissed. Goodbye. I would like to give a special thank you to Big Sip, Zargaran, Oh Crap Guy, Kegnak, The Morrigan, Rowan O'Brien, Braided Peach, Dean Dengus, Dr. Wolf 13, Cupster, Worthy Fire, Zazapan, Irish Wristwatch, Signar, Your Local Foundation Agent, Lost Boy, and James Saba. If you would like a special thank you at the end of each of my videos, and some other cool stuff as well, visit patreon.com/The Volgan.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Hello. Why am I not hitting him? Thank you. Yeah.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Dr. Miller, and the SCP we're going to be looking at today is SCP-783. Object Class, Keter. Special Containment Procedures. Personnel must monitor the town of Tembe and continue to develop the entity's profile. Its victims are to be retrieved, incinerated, and cataloged in this file. Update. Due to recent events, a stronger Foundation presence has been determined to be necessary for the containment of SCP-783 and its related phenomena. An ancillary building near the local hospital, as well as 2 domiciles, have been commandeered from the locals for Foundation use. This property in its entirety has been redesignated as a Provisional Site 5. Description: SCP-783 is a hostile entity currently preying upon the residents of Tembe, a rural hamlet in Oxfordshire, England. It has a period of activity lasting roughly 70 days over the fall and winter months, occurring every 12 years. It exclusively attacks those who are alone and indoors after sunset. Buildings housing SCP-783's current target will experience a steady degradation of their structural integrity. Outwardly, this is visible as faults and breaks on the outer facade, which lend affected structures an angled or crooked appearance. This anomaly extends to any objects which breach the affected building's exterior, causing immediate and severe deformation that is invariably fatal to living subjects. To date, personnel have yet to prevent an attack or been able to provide any means of assistance to SCP-783's targets. Due to this, as well as SCP-783's effects on recording equipment, little is known regarding SCP-783's exact appearance and the nature of its anomalous attributes. Victims of SCP-783 attack exhibit gross deformations in their body structure as the result of dozens of compound fractures along their long bones and severely displaced
These?
vertebrae. These are healed via the rapid generation of excessive cartilage and osseous tissue. Victims display hyperelasticity of their epidermis and musculature to accommodate the extra tissue, with one subject's forearm extending over 2.4 meters
Yeah.
and another having a recorded height of 12.5 meters. The end result of this malformation and elongation are subjects who visually present as being wholly serrated or gnarled. Despite the nature of these injuries, most victims are alive after the cessation of an SCP-783 attack, though they often suffer full-body paralysis or remain in a persistent vegetative state. 27 living specimens have been acquired and placed on life support. They are held in a wing of the local hospital requisitioned for Foundation use. The residents of Tembe are aware of the existence of SCP-783, though speaking of it publicly is considered taboo. Researchers have documented a playground song shared among local youths regarding the anomaly. There lived a crooked man who made a crooked deal. He kept a crooked cane and his catch in crooked creel. He stole a crooked child who cried a crooked squeal, and that little crooked man was broken on the wheel. Observation. Incident log appended. A month prior to SCP-783's current period of activity, D-209 was selected from a group of volunteers to live in a Foundation-owned property in Tembe. Audio-video recording equipment was installed throughout the house for observation purposes. The following was recorded on the 43rd day of his stay. Video log. 2234. Second floor bedroom. D-209 is lying upright in bed, reading a novel. Living room. Live feed experiences a jagged vertical distortion in its display. This begins on the left of the frame near the front door and crosses over to the right side towards the hallway. It lasts approximately 23 seconds. 2235. First floor hallway.
Is this
Floodlights
sword
from the window
literally
opposite
just a
the
different
camera are
move?
obscured by something entering the hallway.
What's the
A
point?
similar distortion effect occurs
What
center
does this
frame,
move do for me?
masking the object. The image quality further degrades before ceasing transmission. Second floor bedroom. D-209 jerks
Jesus
upright,
Christ.
alert. Claims to hear a slow, prolonged scratching sound coming from the first floor. He begins to get up out
Please?
of bed. Note: SCP-783 manifestation confirmed. Visual distortion taken to be an indicator of SCP-783's physical placement within the house. 2236. Second floor stairs. Image becomes wavy and distorted. Movement can be seen, though the interference is such that no details can be made out. Second floor bedroom. Slow, deliberate footsteps can be heard ascending the stairs. D-209 attempts to open the window and escape, to no avail. 2237. Second floor bedroom. D-209 procures a small lamp from the nightstand and makes several attempts to smash through the window. Second floor hallway. Sudden video corruption affects this feed as SCP-783 moves directly in front of the camera. The image resolves over the span of 33 seconds as it moves farther down the hall. At this point, the only affected area on the recording is immediately
Jesus
outside
Christ.
the bedroom. Second floor bedroom. D-209 freezes. A knock is heard at the door. 2238. Second floor bedroom. D-209 approaches the door, wielding the lamp as a cudgel. He asks for the individual at the door to identify themselves, receiving no response. He then asks Control if any personnel were able to gain entry. Observing personnel maintain radio silence. D-209 braces himself and grasps the doorknob with his free hand. D-209 throws the door open. Note: a loud snapping noise is heard throughout the house. All light bulbs on the premises burst simultaneously, including floodlights focused on the property. 2240. Second floor bathroom. Once the camera adjusts to low light conditions, SCP-783 comes into view. It is near the open door to the hallway, motionless. Second floor bedroom. D-209 is screaming, clutching his right arm. It has been fractured just above the elbow and dangles freely. It is observed to swiftly harden, presumably due to rapid bone growth. D-209 shouts his intent to escape with his life and charges from the room. Second floor hallway. As D-209 runs past the bathroom, a loud snapping noise is heard. D-209 falls to the
Well,
ground.
I wasn't beating the
and
time
screams for
anyways,
assistance.
but
He reports that his leg had been broken. Note: video corruption instantly begins to affect the kitchen as the sound is made, ceasing in the
guess it was
bathroom.
greedy to
2245.
try to get money.
Second floor hallway. D209 is able to bring himself to a stand. He displays his right arm for the camera, which has been broken below the elbow. It is angled in the opposite direction from the previous fracture. D209 curses observing personnel, but reports that his pain has mostly subsided. He limps towards the stairs. Second floor stairs. While trying to navigate the stairs, D209 trips and falls. 12 loud snaps are heard in rapid succession. Upon coming to rest, D209 exhibits several more fractures in various places along each limb. He screams as they set, and spasms on the landing. Second floor stairs. D209 begins to ambulate. He struggles to crawl, eventually passing out of frame. 2326. First floor living room. D209 can be seen dragging himself into the room. He strains, moving with great difficulty due to his cumbersome limbs. Each arm is estimated to be over 2 meters in length, with several inflexible brakes that inhibit motion around obstacles. First floor kitchen. SCP-783 demanifests. Visual feed clears. 2331. First floor living room. D209 occupies the majority of the living room. His lower legs stretch out of frame into the hallway. He has a hand on the knob of the front door, but the length of his fingers impairs the dexterity required to manipulate it. A scratching sound is audible in the hallway. D209 expresses distress immediately before being dragged backwards forcibly and off camera. He begins to scream. Note: SCP-783 and D209 remain in the hallway for the duration of the night. Snapping is heard intermittently. D209 ceases screaming at 0427. At 0501, a wet suckling noise can be heard, followed by rapid thumping. Incident 783.1. Concurrent with the noises heard at 0501 during the D209 trial, all 27 living victims in Foundation care went into seizure. Despite the fact that the majority were brain dead or wholly paralyzed, they convulsed for several minutes. To present researchers
Still don't understand what that
during the incident. Life support
does for
systems
me,
several
but
patients were compromised, killing 5. A vast quantity of earth was disturbed on the outskirts of town during this time. Update. Personnel tasked with investigating the recent seismic event were met with resistance from Tembe locals, who crowded around an area in a field to the south of town. After a brief exchange, Agent Collins drew her firearm and discharged a round into the air. The crowd dispersed. Several elongated toes were immediately visible protruding from the freshly exposed earth. A dig team was assembled, and by the following afternoon had unearthed a mass grave, approximately 5 meters across, containing several dozen nude victims of SCP-783. The bodies were well preserved, yet desiccated. Their number was unable to be immediately ascertained owing to the fact that they had been piled atop one another. They were orientated head down, with their limbs extending deeper into the pit. Furthermore, most of the victims had become intertwined or knotted around each other, preventing exhumation without the use of sawing instruments. Researcher Singer elected to extract a tissue sample. During this process, the soil beneath him caved and he tumbled into the pit. The body shifted due to his weight. As he struggled to gain footing, the tangle of limbs gave way and he fell out of sight. Agent Collins promptly commandeered a length of rope and tied it around her waist. She tasked several nearby personnel with reeling her in upon her signal and entered the pit. Approximately 20 meters worth of rope was drawn beneath the corpses as Agent Collins descended. The line became taut after several minutes. She signaled for extraction and was recovered safely. Upon debrief, the agent testified to the existence of an anomalous locale, the entrance to which is located beneath the victims' corpses. A temporary leave of absence was granted to Agent Collins. Field logs. SCP-783-L1. Initial D-Class exploration for observational purposes. Retrieval of MIA personnel, secondary objective. The following is the first recorded exploration regarding the SCP-783 case file. Please refer to the primary documentation for further information. Field Log 1. D-2172 is chosen to perform preliminary observation of the subterranean Tembe anomaly, a large circular pit acting as a mass grave for the twisted and elongated corpses of past SCP-783 victims, all facing downward. D-2172 is suited in MOPP Level 4 gear and fitted with a retractable harness. Communication and video recording devices were hardlined through the tether. They were provided with a handheld photoionization detector, a Geiger counter, and other environmental testing apparatuses. They were allotted a basic survival kit as well as a Ruger LC9 and ample ammunition. Expedition was scheduled to commence at 0800 local time, but does not begin until 0835. This is due to a minor issue regarding D-2172's personal protective garments. Despite being of proper size for their frame, D-2172 proved incapable of fitting them on, even with the assistance of personnel. Larger gear had to be supplied.
What?
Transmission begins as D-2172
Is that just saying he's fat?
crane over the pit of SCP-783 victims. They prod their foot into a fold between the coiled torsos of two corpses, which part. They look up and signal for the technician to continue. Visual feed reduces in clarity intermittently as limbs and bodies pass close to the lenses. 12 meters of tether are expended before daylight is completely obscured. D-2172's headlamp activates. Nothing of note can be seen from their position within the knot of corpses. Descent is put on hold when D-2172 begins to thrash. D-2172 becomes insistent that command resume the descent, and at a faster rate. They claim to have felt a hand caressing their back. At 18 meters, D-2172 reports a sense of vertigo and expresses confusion regarding the direction of travel. After a brief discussion with command, it is determined that D-2172 had experienced an inversion of gravity. D-2172 manages to reorientate themselves and proceeds to climb upwards from their perspective in order to continue descent. Ambient light levels begin to increase as 20 meters of tether are expended. Daylight can be seen shortly thereafter. An overcast sky is captured as D-2172 breaks the surface. The surrounding area is partially obscured, however, due to the countless elongated arms extending upwards from the mass of corpses. D-2172 utilizes two of these appendages as leverage in order to fully extricate themselves. They slowly navigate towards solid ground. The area is seen to perfectly replicate the town of Tembe as it exists in baseline reality. D-2172 is standing in a field on the outskirts of town. To the north is a small stone cottage belonging to a Mr. John Myers, and beyond that, the main road into town. D-2172 turns for a panorama shot. Sparsely wooded areas and fields border D-2172's location in every other direction, confirming that this replication is absolute for as far as can be seen. Thermal and atmospheric readings match those in baseline. D-2172 disengages their harness, with audio-visual feed converting to a wireless stream via a relay device. D-2172 is then instructed to use their photoionization detector to take a head sample of the soil. While D-2172 is testing the sample, researcher Kest notices an oddity regarding the soil surrounding the mass grave on D-2172's end. Upon playing back the footage, dozens of marks can be seen in the soft earth. The pattern of these markings suggests that they have been created by fingers being drawn through the ground. This is noted by command. D-2172 is not informed of this development. D-2172 reports that no contaminants have been detected. Command instructs them next to proceed to the Myers cottage, and to remain vigilant for any signs of researcher Singer. D-2172 arrives at the cottage and knocks thrice on the door. They pause, awaiting an answer, and then proceed to enter. The cottage appears to be uninhabited. D-2172 rummages through the first room, finding nothing of note, and walks into the bedroom. On the wall over the bed is a rough sketch done in charcoal. It depicts the upper body of a reclined humanoid figure holding a rod or staff. Its free hand is outstretched above the headrest. D-2172 is instructed to approach and inspect the drawing. D-2172 is hesitant, professing to feel a great sense of unease while in the drawing's presence. They advance slowly. With each step in its direction comes a decrease in the quality of the video feed, which begins to break up. By the time the drawing is within arm's reach, the video feed is obscured by heavy amounts of static. The audio is drowned out by a shrill whistling noise. Before D-2172 can touch the drawing, Command orders them to withdraw. They acquiesce and back away. Interference is reduced to nominal levels. D-2172 is permitted to exit the premises and explore the village proper. D-2172 walks in silence for a few minutes before the road sign for Tembe becomes visible. They travel down a bend in the road, where on the ground they find a single work boot. Picking it up and turning it over in their hands, it becomes clear that it matches those belonging to researcher Singer. D-2172 intuits the direction Singer could have been traveling, and points out a nearby home. It is a two-story dwelling with a sizable front lawn, housing a wych elm. The tree is noticeably dead. The ground around it is littered with broken limbs. The front door of the abode is wide open.
This quick select is an interesting thing.
Towards it. Director Kim, at the time acting as command and overseeing the excursion, requests to be relieved of duty, citing the onset of a debilitating migraine. They are escorted to their quarters by Agent Collins. Researcher Bond steps in for Director Kim. D-2172 crosses the foyer and enters the living room. There are signs of previous struggle.
God damn it.
The couch is overturned, as is a small end table. There is a hole in the wall in the bottom of the floor. D-2172 steps over the shattered remains of a tabletop lamp and into the adjoining kitchen. This room is in a similar state of disarray. Dishes, foodstuffs, and appliances that would have been on the shelves or countertop litter the floor leading back to the living room. Most of these items have incurred damage, suggesting that they had been stuck or thrown with considerable force. As D-2172 nears the sink, a small pool of blood can be seen on the floor. There is a clear pattern of cast-off spatter on the walls and counter, with long strokes indicating that an assailant delivered several successive blows with a bladed weapon. D-2172 kneels to take a sample of the blood, and upon standing, a butcher's block can be seen laying on its side next to the sink. All of the slots are filled, save for the one intended for a meat cleaver. D-2172 notes this fact. A series of passive bloodstains leads from D-2172's location and towards a door on the far end of the room. The door is heavily pockmarked and scratched, indicating assault. It is found to be locked from the other side. D-2172 attempts to kick the door in, but only manages to splinter some wood along the doorframe before becoming winded after 3 attempts. They walk back towards the other end of the kitchen, take a deep breath, and charge at the door. D-2172 shoulders the door at full speed, reaching it successfully. Their momentum carries them over the door's threshold, where they panic and brace the wall for support in order to stop themselves from falling down a flight of stairs leading to the basement. D-2172 gains their bearings and is chided for their reckless behavior. Command instructs them to enter the basement. After trying the light switch, which fails to produce a result, they have a brief discussion with Command on the merits of documenting the contents of the basement, and they place heavy emphasis on the value of their own life. They are eventually persuaded to continue on threat of being cast adrift. D-2172 activates their headlamp. They draw their firearm, disengage the safety, and carefully descend in a low ready stance, hugging the wall opposite the railing. The basement is largely empty. D-2172 sweeps the area, and something on the ground in the far corner of the room glints under the light of their headlamp. D-2172 approaches and finds the missing meat cleaver wet with blood. They kneel to inspect the cleaver, and upon standing, they notice a quarter-meter wide hole in the concrete wall, an exhaust vent leading above ground. A piece of fabric is hanging from inside it. Closer inspection reveals it to be a pant leg. D-2172 pulls at their article, which is found to be a tattered pair of tan slacks previously worn by researcher Singer. A rustling is heard from within the vent. D-2172 leans in to closer inspect, and something fleshy can be seen which quickly moves up a bend in the pipe and out of sight. D-2172 promptly withdraws from the premises. Due to the discoveries within the domicile, researcher Singer is presumed to have been killed in action. D-2172 is instructed to travel out of town in order to further document the nature of the area itself and determine its actual boundaries, if any. Little of note occurs for the next 40 minutes as D-2172 travels north and out of town down Tembe's main street. D-2172 is now outside Tembe's town limits, continuing on the main road, which now winds through a densely wooded grove of silver birches. This geography remains consistent with that of baseline for the following 2 kilometers, at which point the forest gives way to fields. It is not until a small cottage is spotted ahead that D-2172 expresses concern. They stop and survey the surrounding area, revealing that they had somehow emerged back on the south side of Tembe. D-2172 conveys to command that they cannot see the limbs of SCP-738 victims, which should have been visible extending out of the body pit. They diverge from the path and run towards the expected location of the victims. Upon reaching it, there is a large circular area of overturned soil, and a distinct lack of corpses. There are no signs of D-2172's presence here either. A previously discarded sample bag, along with the relay device and accompanying tethered harness, are absent. D-2172 begins to panic, and is instructed to hold their position while command decides upon a course of action. Researcher Bond confers with the on-hand technician to confirm the status of D-2172's harness. It is relayed that it had not been retracted prematurely, nor had any length of tether been expended since D-2172 set aside their harness. After some deliberation, it is determined that D-2172 has possibly entered an iterative spatial zone situated adjacent from their original area of entry. It is then decided that exploration beyond this point would be best handled by personnel experienced with excursions of this nature. D-2172 was instructed to follow the road back towards the entry point. D-2172 is traveling down the road through the silver birch forest at a brisk pace, idly conversing with command. It is as they remark on the absence of any form of life that a rustle of leaves can be heard. D-2172 turns towards the source of the noise to find the naked body of an elongated SCP-783 victim. It is sprawled across the road, unmoving, a few dozen meters away. D-2172 swears loudly and then turns to continue on the path. Another SCP-783 victim is stretched along the road before him, some distance away, also unmoving. D-2172 withdraws their firearm and takes a step towards it. A rustling and snapping sound can then be heard behind D-2172, who again turns to face the victim behind them. Although the body's position remains unchanged, it is clear that the trunk and arms had grown and elongated, twisting and breaking, placing them closer to D-2172's position. More snapping can be heard once again from behind D-2172. They rapidly turn and fire at the SCP-783 victim, barring their path. whose neck had elongated and bent such that it placed their head roughly a meter away from D-2172 at eye level. Though several rounds are discharged directly into its face, it elicits no reaction. The snapping can be heard once again from the unobserved victim behind D-2172, who absconds from between the entities by running off the road and into the woods. D-2172 runs for several minutes eastward, ignoring Command's advice to keep the road within view. They eventually stop to catch their breath and recuperate, coming to rest momentarily on a large rock. There is no sign of pursuit from the SCP-783 victims.
Oh, fuck.
D-2172 uses this opportunity to reload their firearm. Upon holstering it, they take some time to consume an MRE. They consult with Command on their relative position and determine the proper direction of travel. A moment is taken to alleviate themselves, and they set off. The trek is largely uneventful over the next 14 minutes before D-2172 stops. They claim to feel minute vibrations in the ground, coming in short, punctuated bursts. Though they are assured that the sensation may be attributable to the unstable region of space-time in which they are in, something that should not be concerning, they insist on remaining still, listening. They inform Command of a muted thumping noise coinciding with the vibrations. This is not picked up on audio. They advance carefully, again readying their firearm. Off in the distance, the camera captures a single silver birch tree being lifted vertically out of sight above the tree line. D-2172 does not seem to have witnessed it. As Command attempts to communicate this to D-2172, it comes back down through the treetops, much closer to D-2172, and impacts the ground with enough force to shake the ground. It can now be seen that despite its thickness and mottled white coloration, that it is not in fact a birch tree. From D-2172's vantage point, it cannot be seen to have any branches, and it extends to a point somewhere above the canopy. D-2172 is instructed to approach and physically inspect it. Before they can act upon this, another such object comes down directly next to D-2172, knocking them to the ground. Once on their feet, they approach the second object. They pause once again to see the faint impression of ridges and grooves running along the object's side, and opposite of it, a flattish, horny nail plate. D-2172 fires at the object and draws blood. It quickly withdraws. A deep, protracted scream emanates from above D-2172, who breaks into a run. D-2172 runs through the forest, swearing incessantly and begging for some form of assistance or support from Command. As they run, more objects crash down around them, seemingly trying to hit D-2172 directly. They break from the forest. They are now on the northern outskirts of Tembe. As D-2172 hurries to close the distance to town, another of the unidentified objects collides with D-2172, knocking them on their back. The object comes to rest beside D-2172, taking up the majority of the visual feed. D-2172's gaze follows the object, tracing up its length. Without the obstruction of the canopy, it can be seen to bend and twist, terminating several hundred meters in the air. D-2172 screams when they discover its source. The nude form of researcher Singer is suspended high in the air, balanced on elongated and grossly enlarged fingers. Researcher Bond stands from her position at the control console, doubles over, and proceeds to vomit profusely. A member of medical staff rushes to her side in time to catch her as she falls unconscious. Dr. Peterson elects to take her place at the command console. Agent Collins arrives to help carry researcher Bond to the medical bay where she is to receive corrective treatment. The Singer creature screams a hollow sound, lifting one finger from somewhere deep within the silver birch grove, felling several trees as they drag it towards D-2172. D-2172 rolls to their left and out of its path. They withdraw their weapon and fire at Singer, failing to hit their mark. The Singer creature can then be seen to lift its
God
left
damn it.
hand, slowly dragging its digits together to grab D2172. D2172 swiftly comes to a stand and runs in the opposite direction.
That was dumb.
The digits can be heard colliding with one another behind them. They safely reach the main road and do not slow their pace as they follow it south through town. Loud thumping can be heard as the Singer creature ambulates on their digits in pursuit. D2172 narrowly avoids a finger as it sweeps past them to the right, crashing through a chain link fence surrounding one of the houses. Another finger plummets through the roof of an abode ahead of D2172. D2172 swears repeatedly as they come around the bend where they found researcher Singer's boot. They pass the road sign, nearly falling as they trip over their own feet. D2172's pace begins to slow as they are clearly becoming winded. The Myers
Just
cottage
occurred to me
comes
I
into
don't have
view,
any of
and
these.
Shortly thereafter, arms can be seen extending out from the body pit. Command encourages D2172, urging them to reach the pit and assuring them that the technician standing by is prepared to reel them back in. The Singer creature screeches. D2172 is knocked aside with great force, tumbling into the field. Visual feed is lost due to incurred damage. D2172 can be heard screaming and swearing, with ambient volume suggesting that they are getting farther and farther away from the recorder. The thumping of the Singer creature's fingers can be heard, becoming more and more distant as well. Silence is recorded for the final half hour. Dr. Peterson orders the termination of the audio feed and declares 2172 as lost. It is decided that D2172's harness may be recalled for future use. Agent Collins arrives in the control room and discusses the matter with Dr. Peterson. Collins asserts that there is no evidence that D2172 was captured or had expired, citing an ethics committee mandate on the exploration of non-incursive, extra-dimensional locales. They persuade Dr. Peterson to leave available D2172's harness. Several personnel remain on hand over the next several hours. At 02:13 local time, the presiding technician reports that they witnessed the tether moving. After a moment of stillness, they are able to observe it becoming briefly taut as the line is tugged on twice, D2172's signal for extraction. Medical personnel are notified, and it is anticipated that D2172 will need to be tended to. After a minute, D2172's empty body harness breaks the surface. It appears that none of the straps had been properly secured prior to being recalled. The harness seems to be caught on something within the pit. The tether continues to retract, revealing the hand of D2172 grasping to the harness, which slips out of their grip. D2172's hand can be seen to move animatedly, attempting to grab hold of something to keep it from slowly sinking back into the mass of corpses. D209 rushes towards the pit, grabbing hold of D2172's hand moments before it falls out of sight. They begin to sink into the knot of bodies as well. D774, Dr. Lafayette, and Private Audie quickly come to assist D209, forming a human chain, and with their combined strength begin to pull a pair of D-Class from the pit. D209 is successfully extricated, his arms are outstretched, hands still grasping that of D2172, whose hand comes back into view. As the four men pull, approximately 3 meters of D2172's forearm are dislodged from the body pit. It begins to bend and snap at several new points of articulation. D209 lets go. D2172 is reclaimed by the pit. SCP-783-L2. Special Operative dispatched to further ascertain the nature of SCP-783. The following is a second recorded exploration regarding the SCP-783 case file. Please refer to the primary documentation for further information. Field Log 2. Due to the events which transpired during SCP-783-L1, it is determined that the spatial zone accessible through the knot of corpses within the town of Tembe is likely recursive, being bordered on all sides by successive iterations of itself. Essentially, the dimension consists of perfect copies of a single cell in an endless grid layout. A special operative, or SO, would be required to effectively traverse the locale. Special Operative Nix is requisitioned from Site-121 in the United States. She was chosen due to her expertise in traversing extraspatial locales featuring recurring topology, having personally mapped 27 iterations of SCP, engineered a supply line for Mobile Task Force Tierfing Black during their second tour of SCP, and having successfully navigated an escape route through Site during an emergency extraction of assets. After a full debriefing and several viewings of D-2172's exploration log, Special Operative Nix spends her first week on site personally inspecting the town limits of baseline Tembe and denoting points of interest along the wooded outskirts on her personal map. It is only after she had acquainted herself with the local topography that she requisitions materials from HQ and makes final preparations for her dive into the Tembe Pit of Corpses. On the 8th day, Special Operative Nix returns to the site with the following: approximately 1,000 referencing exit markers, REM, a prismatic compass and map of Tembe, sufficient rations for a 3-day excursion, wireless audio-visual surveillance camera, an M10 14 shotgun with side saddle, 12-gauge buckshot times 16, a shotgun shell bandolier, 12-gauge buckshot times 20, and 12-gauge slug times 36, one 24-inch machete, and Unit K9-121, a 2-year-old Dutch Shepherd, Tafos. Agent Collins is chosen to oversee command during the excursion, owing to the sickness which had affected her colleagues during the previous expedition's broadcast. Special Operative Nix spends an hour in the evening by practicing quick-load maneuvers for her firearm. By noon, she is outfitted in full tactical protective gear. Both Special Operative Nix and K9-121 are lowered through the Tembe mass grave, one after another at sunrise. Once within the Tembe replica, Special Operative Nix is able to repair the relay device installed during the first expedition by D-2172. The camera feed activates. There is a light early morning fog permeating the air as the feed activates. Special Operative Nix scans the surrounding fields and farmlands, identifying no immediate threats. There is no sign of D-2172. She turns and calls out to K9-121, who is partially obscured by the arms, reaching up from the body's pit tangle of corpses. As K9-121 comes around to meet up with Special Operative Nix, it passes beneath a low-hanging limb from one of the bodies, which breaks with an audible crack. The gnarled limb stops just short of touching K9-121 before it is swiftly severed by Special Operative Nix's machete. As the pair depart, intermittent cracks can be heard from the grounded appendage as it continues to convulse and fracture. The first 15 minutes of their travels consist of heading in a southeasterly direction, gradually identifying memorized aspects of the environment such as fauna and rock formations flanking the wooded path out of town. Due to the lack of life forms, the only sounds are crunching leaves as they progress. It is once a felled tree is spotted that Special Operative Nix identifies a point which should be in the northwestern area of the town. At this point, an REM is hung from a nearby branch. Special Operative Nix walks off the path and into the woods to further delineate the area in which the replicate Tembe ends, and the next cell in the grid begins. Special Operative Nix methodically begins canvassing the woods and cross-referencing her map, placing REMs to delineate the boundaries of the primary zone. K9-121 bounds through the woods alongside her during this time, occasionally sniffing the area. 45 minutes pass uneventfully until K9121 pauses, alert and focused on an area off in the distance ahead. Special Operative Nix readies her shotgun, and the pair proceed with caution. Up ahead, a long, gnarled white shape can be seen snaking through the undergrowth and between trees, partially obscured beneath scattered leaves and detritus. K9121 approaches within a meter of the object, before halting at Special Operative Nix's command. Upon approach, mottled white flesh can be made out, as well as varicose veins running across its length. The appendage trails off far into the distance and outside the boundaries of the primary Tembi facsimile on one end. The other end terminates in an average-sized foot nearby. At the beseech of command, Special Operative Nix moves to investigate the foot, which can be seen to sport a colorful tattoo encircling the shin. Closer inspection reveals it to be an oriental dragon, its mouth open and consuming the tail in an Ouroboros. This confirms the identity of the cadaver as being D-2172. Special Operative Nix asks command for orders concerning course of action. An alarm is set off within the base. Command is notified that Dr. Lafayette has escaped their quarters with the assistance of D-774. A search unit is deployed, and the residents of baseline Tembi are notified of the fugitives. Receiving no guidance from command, Special Operative Nix states her intention to follow D-2172's limb through the woods and into the next cell in the grid. She calls K9121 to her side, and they begin walking. 3 quick bone-splintering cracks can be heard behind the pair. Special Operative Nix quickly turns, drawing her shotgun to see that the ankle of D-2172 has snapped and twisted such that the foot is raised off the ground and slightly coiled, toes pointing in her direction. K9121 puts itself in front of her, raises its haunches, and emits a low growl. Special Operative Nix backs away slowly. She puts an additional 3 meters between herself and the foot, with no signs of further movement from it. She whistles for K9121, and they continue following the limb. The two follow D-2172's leg for approximately 1.5 kilometers, where it then zigzags up a nearby incline, crossing perpendicular to a dirt path that ascends a rocky hill. Checking her map, Special Operative Nix identifies herself as having arrived at the base of Shallows Peak, Tembi's highest point of elevation, which lay to the north of town. She attempts to radio command to no avail, then reports that she will ascend the hill in order to use the elevation to canvass the area and provide a sitrep. The ascent takes roughly 20 minutes. Dr. Lafayette is recovered by a Tembi constable after trying to enlist the help of local police. They are brought back to the base. Agent Collins leaves the control room in order to aid Dr. Lafayette and ensure he receives proper medical care. D-774 was shot and killed during the confrontation that led to Dr. Lafayette's capture. Their remains are returned to base. Cresting the second leg of the hill, the trail can be seen to lead alongside a rocky wall before ending at the mouth of a small cave. Special Operative Nix notes that this cave does not exist in baseline Tembi. As she nears the entrance, the visual feed degrades slightly. K9121 whines quietly and is assuaged by Special Operative Nix. In between static interference, the cave is seen to possess signs of habitation. To the right, the walls can be seen to have been carved to create small shelves, speckled with indiscernible filth. An ancient cast-iron lidded pot sits in the center of the room atop a mound of partially burnt petrified wood, encircled by rocks. On the left, discoloration in a roughly 3x1 area of the cave's rear suggests former existence of bedding in that corner, long since rotted away. Special Operative Nix takes 2 steps in before stopping short. She looks to K9121, who remains outside the cave entrance, head lightly bowed and its tail tucked between its legs. Special Operative Nix heads over to K9121, kneels down and coddles the animal, petting it and commanding it to remain in place. Standing back up, she moves inside to check the shelves. Small bits of wicker, possibly some form of ornamentation, crumble upon being touched. Advancing to the pot, a carving can be seen on its side, which she inspects. She removes the pot's lid and gags. It is shown to be filled with a murky brown pool of stagnant water, within which floats several objects unable to be made out, until Special Operative Nix activates her headlamp and gasps at the sight of over a dozen small bones. Based off of the most clearly visible of these, an ulna, it is estimated that the remains belong to an individual no more than 2 months of age. The display is further plagued by static. Special Operative Nix replaces the lid and sets the pot down carefully. She pauses momentarily, partly stands and staggers, and then proceeds to fall to her knees and vomit profusely. She curses quietly and sniffles afterwards for a minute, obscuring the camera feed as she wipes her face. Looking up, a small nook in the cave wall can be seen at foot level, beside where the bed previously lay. Something small and brown is inside it. Special Operative Nix takes a few deep breaths, then raises to a stand. Static builds as Special Operative Nix crosses over to investigate. She kneels, places her hand inside, and pulls out the object. The visual field is overcome by white noise, though Special Operative Nix can still be heard, who reports finding some form of diary. Flipping through the first few weathered pages reveals little of import. Any content that may have once been present has long since faded. She continues to scan the document when a hollow popping noise rings out. Turning quickly, no immediate threat or change in surroundings is seen. K9121 begins approaching cautiously. Another sharp, wet pop noise is heard. K9121 growls at Special Operative Nix and glances about for the noise's source. It sounds off a third time, and the lid of the cast iron pot vibrates as it is struck from within. Special Operative Nix flees the cave. With D774's remains being tended to by Director Kim, Agent Collins and Dr. Lafayette arrive at the control room. Agent Collins dons the headset and announces her presence to Special Operative Nix. Special Operative Nix has reached the top of Shallow's Peak by the time Command is able to reach her, and relays the events of the previous hour. From her perspective, she is clearly able to see both the replicate Tembi to the east, where she entered, as well as its iterative copy to the west, in the cell she now occupies. In a panoramic shot, a dozen windmills of further Tembi replicates can be viewed far off in the distance. She explains to Command that although the pattern of the surrounding areas supports the recursive iteration theory of this dimension's layout, that there are noted inconsistencies within the grid she inhabits. Beyond the cave, which did not exist in baseline or replicate Tembi, she points out a small grove of dead trees that seemingly has no parallel elsewhere in the grid. Similarly, Special Operative Nix claims to have spotted an unidentifiable structure in the town center of Tembi in her cell. Upon query from Command as to why there would be a deviation from the pattern, Special Operative Nix suggests that the presence of D2172 across the boundary of 2 iterations may be causing fluctuations in the integrity of the grid cell she occupies. Likening it to cellular lysis, Special Operative Nix explains how the border between spatial zones could be weakened by foreign material occupying 2 cells in a grid simultaneously for an extended period of time, a problem that prohibited the building of Outpost 41 with SCP several years prior. Despite the instability of this cell, she posits that the deformations in this zone may be reflections of the historical state of Tembi, and therefore present a valuable research opportunity that merits further exploration. Special Operative Nix begins her descent. Small cracks and pops can be heard still reverberating within the cave as she passes. She does not look inside. Someone is sobbing. At the bottom of the hill, a path of dead grass and foliage can be seen where previously D-2172's leg had lain. K-9121 sniffs about this area and begins following the trail further into the cell, in the direction of the next Tembe. The two travel at a steady pace, with Special Operative Nix checking regularly behind them as they progress. The forest slightly darkens as cloud cover obscures the sun. A sharp report of bone snapping echoes in the distance. Special Operative Nix holds her shotgun in a low ready position and double-checks the safety. Another crack. The splintering of bones sounds off repeatedly from an indiscernible source as Special Operative Nix levels her weapon, attempting to follow the noise. Another crack. Small branches and leaves fall and flitter about as the foot of D-2172 emerges from the canopy. Dangling from above, it quickly twists and breaks, turning to face Special Operative Nix with its toes. It is immediately met with 3 rapid bursts of buckshot. The appendage dangles loosely, dripping blood from its shredded remains. The foot is almost entirely destroyed, consisting of chunks of flesh suspended by the ankle, with only the posterior and anterior digits remaining. It lolls to and fro from the concussive force of the shots, swaying impotently. K-9121 snarls and barks at the appendage. Special Operative Nix keeps her weapon trained on it as the two work to carefully circumvent it. It is as they pass it that the appendage swiftly plunges into the ground, trailed by several meters of leg. The appendage is swollen from countless fractures across its length, giving it dozens of points of extra articulation. Special Operative Nix breaks into a run as the coiled mass begins to shift. The two barrel through the forest, K-9121 in the lead, leaping and dodging over obstacles in the terrain. Behind them, a furor of rustling and banging can be heard as the leg bursts through the foliage and violently rebounds off trees, tearing through the woods in pursuit. Special Operative Nix takes a sharp right, then a left, followed by another right, in an attempt to carve a path that would have D-2172's leg caught up and tangled between the trees. As K-9121 continues a more direct route towards town, Special Operative Nix is now alone. There is a crash as the appendage ricochets off a nearby tree to her right, with the remains of D-2172's foot shooting perpendicular across her path, barring progress as the length of leg snakes behind it. Special Operative Nix transitions into a low slide, avoiding collision, and fires into the flesh of the leg. The leg convulses as she rolls, raises to her feet, ducks beneath the limb, and breaks off running. After 5 paces, the feet shakes as she is struck from behind and falls face first to the ground. Quickly coming to a kneel, her shotgun can be seen laying several feet away in the brush. As she begins to crawl towards it, there is a quick flash of mottled flesh across the feed. The limb crosses in front of her once, twice, 3 times. Special Operative Nix groans as the appendage warps around her. Looking down, it is clear that her arms are pinned to her sides. Her machete lay at her hip, inches from her grasping hand as she struggles. The leg pulls back, twisting in on itself ever further, coiling about her like a snake, jerking the feet about as she is spun backwards into its many folds. The twirling ceases, and Special Operative Nix screams as the limb tightens around her. The remains of D-2172's foot comes into view. It hovers before Special Operative Nix. There is a pair of cracks as the remaining pinky and big toes splinter and fracture, forming 2 sharp prongs that pinpoint her face. It rears back momentarily before it launches forward. Just as it is about to strike Special Operative Nix, there is a flurry of motion. K-9121 leaps from off-camera, catching D-2172's foot in its mouth. The limb writhes as the animal wrestles with the appendage. The leg loosens,
what a good boy.
Special Operative Nix. The appendage twists and curls as K-9121 tears into it with his teeth, quivering in an unnatural manner. Special Operative Nix crawls toward her firearm as they contend with one another in the background. She grabs her gun and turns in time to see the leg sweep under the feet of K9121, wrap around the canine and retract at a rapid pace. The dog yelps as the limb ensnares it and absconds off into the woods away from Special Operative Nix.
No.
Agent Collins informs Special Operative Nix that she needs to progress towards the next town. She is advised to not follow the limb and to consider the animal a lost asset. Ignoring command, Special Operative Nix charges after the fleeing leg. The knot of flesh wrapped around K9121 shreds a path through the forest, ripping through the brush and felling some of the smaller trees. Special Operative Nix curses and pants as she chases after it. The leg begins to draw itself upward to pull the animal's weight up alongside it and out of sight. As it drags itself away, the mass becomes caught up between a pair of trees.
Why did my lock
positioned beside one
fail?
K9121 whimpers as the leg constricts in an attempt to squeeze through. Special Operative Nix catches up, discarding her shotgun and lunging forward with a swift blow from her machete. There is a high-pitched shriek in the distance. She strikes it again, and again, and again. She bellows a long scream as she viciously assaults the leg, cutting clear into the flesh and revealing bone. She hacks and chops and shouts as the dog whines and attempts to free itself. The leg ceases its attempts to pull through the trees and instead raises sharply upwards, knocking Special Operative Nix away. The cries of K9121 can be heard above her before trailing off into the far distance, out of earshot. Someone is sobbing. Special Operative Nix screams in anger. She stands, shouting threats off into the wilderness after the leg, crying out for it to return, swearing retribution. It takes several minutes for her to calm down. She radios command, asking for help to hunt the leg of D-2172, and is denied. She is instructed to either investigate the Tembi in her cell or abort the mission, and chooses the former. She retrieves her firearm and continues progress. Given the distance traveled during the chase, it is not long before she is met with the farmland, which encircles this version of Tembi. Unlike the baseline town, the farmlands here are barren. Not a single piece of vegetation sprouts from the dirt, which is seen to appear dry and infertile as she treks onward. Entering the town, Special Operative Nix stalks silently through the streets. She rounds a corner, peering into the general store as she passes, revealing several SCP-783 victims pressed up against the plate glass. There is still another on the second story of the hardware store across the street. 3 more peer out from within a sedan half-parked on the curb, having crashed into a lamppost. Another is visible beneath the gate of a storm drain, its face contorted and pressed up against the bars, with enough force that bits of fat press upwards through them. None move to attack. A sudden cacophony of splintering wood and breaking glass interrupts the silence. Turning around, Special Operative Nix sees that the buildings flanking the end of the street have taken a broken, crooked appearance. Their foundations crumble, a hallmark of SCP-783's influence. Before Special Operative Nix can react, the pair of buildings collapse inwards, blocking the road she'd entered from. It is unknown if it is the sudden noise or the possible presence of SCP-783 itself, but the corpses spotted through the town begin to shudder violently. The trio in the car can be seen to thrash about wildly. Their bones break and snap and crack and rapidly heal and stretch. Within seconds, the entirety of the sedan is full of flesh knotted together and writhing. The windshield cracks from the pressure. D-774 enters the control room. Special Operative Nix continues towards the town center. It is here that a major deviation from baseline Tembi is discovered. In the center of the intersection, before the steps of the town hall, stands a sizable wooden platform supported on a large, sturdy base. Erected in the middle of the platform is a large, rounded contraption. There is an unidentifiable mound upon it. Special Operative Nix approaches, ascending the stairs revealing the contraption to be a wheel with several spokes radiating from its center. The mound is a nude, disheveled human strapped to the device, face down. In each area where their limbs cross an empty space between the wheel's spokes, the appendage is gnawed and broken, with their left leg swollen and grossly extended. It trails off the side of the platform. Looking to her right, a singular piece of parchment can be seen nailed to a post atop the stairs. The document is a sensationalized proclamation of guilt, identifying an individual by the name of Hinger Woonybald. The paper denounces him as a highwayman, guilty of theft, child murder, witchcraft, and cannibalism. It finally goes on to state the ruling of his punishment, asserting that he is to be broken on the wheel. Special Operative Nix confirms with command that they have a clear capture of the paper's contents before she casts it aside. She takes a moment to retrack her shotgun with slug ammunition and moves towards the macabre display. Prodding the corpse with the barrel of the gun elicits no response. She deftly circles around to its front to get a look at its face. Kneeling down, the visage of D-2172 comes into view. His face is bloated, features twisted in agony. Upon verifying its identity, Special Operative Nix follows the length of his leg with her camera, seeing it lead off behind a nearby building. She states her intention to follow it to K9121, but is interrupted by a low moan. Turning back, the corpse of D-2172's eyes focus on her. She reels backwards and discharges her weapon. Due to the close proximity, the shot removes the upper part of D-2172's head. The body gurgles and seethes as she stands and fires the next 2 rounds down into its trunk, causing D-2172 to spray a torrent of blood from the remains of its mouth. Special Operative Nix recoils as she is coated in these fluids, stumbling back. There is a sickening crack as the lower jaw of D-2172 contorts and lengthens along the right side, and another snap as the left half breaks and extends. 3 more cracks see the jawline widening and lengthening. It lashes out as she attempts a quick load, just missing her face and spraying yet more blood that obscures the feed. The sound of Special Operative Nix hurriedly descending the staircase is heard. While there can be seen to be movement on the camera feed, no details are discernible. The next several minutes consist primarily of audio as Special Operative Nix evades and combats the ever-breaking jaw of D-2172. All that can be heard are her shouts and cries, the breaking and splintering of bone, and the sound of rent flesh as Special Operative Nix fends off the attack with her machete. In the midst of the struggle, a lone shotgun blast rings out. The weapon can be heard clattering to the ground before all falls silent. The feed is darkened as Special Operative Nix rubs the camera, clearing it to the best of her ability. It will remain smeared for the remainder of filming, but the aftermath of the struggle can be seen. The jaw of D-2172 stretches from his corpse and crisscrosses through the intersection. Blood blankets the majority of the area, and several teeth are visible, having been knocked from the gum line. Special Operative Nix is panting and heaving. She looks down, revealing that she'd lost an index finger on her right hand. She swears as she covers it with her free hand in an attempt to stem the bleeding. She canvasses to the ground for the lost digit, which is then spotted laying several feet away. As she rushes towards it, it seizes and wriggles, snapping and beginning to elongate. Special Operative Nix turns to retreat, dipping down mid-run to grab her firearm as she flees. Despite prodding from command, Special Operative Nix does not return to the execution platform to scour for more evidence. She instead rushes along the length of the leg trailing from D-2172's corpse. She curses over the radio at Agent Collins, casting her helmet aside. The last that is seen of Special Operative Nix is her running down a length of road alongside D-2172's leg. She follows it around the corner. Several minutes pass uneventfully. The leg of D-2172 then shifts and gyrates, slapping the ground with excessive force for approximately 30 seconds before becoming still. A minute later, the lens spontaneously cracks. There is heavy breathing. Someone is sobbing.
It's
The
true. I
area
could stop
darkens as it
the
is
time
cast
for
in
that.
shadow. The feed terminates as the camera is destroyed. Special Operative Nix is deemed absent without leave. With the nature of the dimension fully understood, it is determined that a fully armed force would be required for the capture or elimination of SCP-783. SCP-783-L3. Mobile Task Force deployed to contain SCP-783 pending declassification. SCP-783-L4. Okay, this concludes today's lecture. Thank you for listening, if indeed you still are, and you are all dismissed.
Oh, that was a pretty spooky story. Very long. Kinda sleepy. Keep waking up relatively early. 'Cause I gotta do work. Physical labor. Yeah, anyway. I think I'm gonna call it. Next time I'll do some more boss stuff, I guess. I wish there was a way to track what you've already bought better. Blast powder in this one. I guess this one's probably arrows, so I need arrows still. Regular difficult. That's interesting. I haven't tried just going back into the Lost Woods. I wonder if there's anything I can do that way. I kind of doubt it. It's interesting that they put a label on it, though. It's won something. Some money. Don't really care about that, but it's fine. The fuck? Guess I can just fall down. Okay. Where the hell am I? North side. Well, I got some rupees. Kinda cool, I guess. The fuck? Yeah. But Lost Woods without bro. There's probably something. Maybe not. Seems crazy. Navi, what did you make a noise for? Shit. Oh, it was just random happenstance. Got baited. It's crazy that this doesn't have a magic cost. I mean, I guess it's just they wanted a way to move faster. Oops. All right. Now I'm gonna go. Good night. The internet, I hope everything. I hope you find $20. That's what I hope for you, the internet. I hope you look on the ground and you find $20. No victim.